Hello, sir.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, fucking tired.
Yeah?
Yeah, man. I mean, basically between Tuesday night, was it Tuesday? No, Monday. So
If it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium.
Sunday. God, fucking days. Jesus, I can't even remember what fucking day it is. Is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday. Shit. What day did we do blue collar? Monday?
Sunday night.
Sunday night. Okay. So basically, I turned that around pretty quick, and then yesterday we recorded all the wraparounds for detours, and I did all that. I know it's probably getting to a point for you, and maybe it's getting to a point for me, so therefore I'm projecting of you just going.
Well, this is the projection booth.
Well, you just going, man, I really am tired of fucking listening to you, bitch. It really is getting fucking old. I'm not fucking hip to this. It's like the last 6 months have just been nothing but a bitch fest, and it's kind of up and down, and even when you should be happy, like right now, you're still a miserable fuck. So I'm doing my best.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right.
Welcome to a special episode of the projection booth. We call this Ego Fest.
Ego.
This is the third one.
This is the thing that I love about our show, because there are other shows that will remain nameless out there that basically the first, 15, 20 minutes, half hour, 16 hours of however long the show is just two guys talking. Hey man, how you been? Oh, I'm doing all right. I went and had a sub over here and I met up with so-and-so and then I went to the comic shop and I'm not digging that comic book, but whatever, I bought it anyway. And then we went and saw this movie and then finally they talk about the movie. See, we don't mess around in the projection booth. We get right to the point. So that's why only like once a year we do this extravagant thing called Ego Fest where all we do is talk about ourselves.
The groundhog has seen his shadow, so it is time for us to reveal the innermost secrets of the projection booth and to sing our own praises.
Well, aren't you lucky? That's the most expensive machine in the whole hospital. It costs £750,000. Aren't you lucky?
Rob, you got big news.
Oh, yeah?
You have held in your hands a copy of your own book. How does that feel?
Oh, man. Well, as a gentleman who's written a few books over there, Mike, I'm sure you know what this is like. I mean, you spend a lot of time on these things, usually in the dark, caffeinated, kind of sequestered, like you're picking the new pope or something, and eventually you come out and, as you said, the groundhog sees the shadow, and they handed this thing to me about a month ago, and it was the proof that the printer used to, make sure that they were all happy with it. It was, I don't have kids. I'm never going to have kids. I know this is a fact. So they handed the thing to me, and it was like holding my kid. I mean, it's like 3 pounds. It's 12 by 10 thing, full color, and I was grinning ear to ear. I mean, it was like Christmas, but it was a Christmas that I've been like waiting for 4 years. It was a Christmas that people who were in the book kept saying to me, "When's that book going to get done?" And it's like, when it's done. I had that little Paul Masson thing going on there, like old Orson tells us, not the drunk version, but the regular one.
The French
will serve no book before its time. But the whole thing with the Orbit Magazine Anthology is great. It arrived actually the remaining 2,500 copies into the warehouse over at Wayne State University Press in Detroit last week. I started to send them out, and good people, many listeners of the projection booth, when we did the Patronicity fundraiser last fall, gave some money and got some cool stuff, including you, Mr. Mike, who are getting a copy of the book, and I can't wait to hand it to you personally. It's just been really cool so far. I mean, the early notices, the early reviews have been really good. The attention's been really nice. And what's really fun for me is putting it in front of people who were part of this, people who were at the magazines, who wrote the stuff, who created it, people who were featured in the magazines, and even the main guy himself, Jerry Vile. Jerry was the first one to get a copy. When I handed it to him, he was like, wow. He's like, I didn't expect it to be this heavy and this nice. And he was kind of blown away too. So it's really been impressive to me to see how it's all come together. And I know how sort of supremely lucky I am. The universe kind of tumbled in my direction on this one, and I don't, I want to believe that all my future endeavors are going to be this easy, although it was 4 years of hard work. But I know that that's probably not going to be the case. I'm probably going to have to go to the mat, and and things are going to be harder from here on in. It's just been a great ride so far, and the book isn't even out yet. It comes out September 1st, which, if this comes out the day before, then it should be available to you the next day at, if you're in the Detroit area, some fine bookstores. And also you can get it on Amazon. You can get it through my publisher, Wayne State University Press. It's just been a great ride so far.
So where's the best place for people to get it? Like, does anything benefit you more or benefit Wayne State University Press more than something else? Like, I imagine that Amazon takes a big effing cut out of stuff.
Well, the thing is that in my contract, basically my percentages are all the same. It doesn't really matter where you buy it. The only way that it really helps me is I have a certain number of books that I've bought from the press for events that I'm doing around town. And there's a couple of events that I'm doing around town that I have to bring the books because that venue doesn't want to buy them, which I can understand. That's not their thing. It's an art gallery. It's a movie theater. They're not in the business of buying books. So when you buy those books from me at the location, that actually does well for me because it helps me to pay back the cost on the books. But outside of that, it's it's basically wherever you want to buy it. Really, the only thing that kind of matters is not necessarily where you buy it, but how many are bought. Because of how my contract is, it's all based on the sales numbers. So if I sell the whole run, which I'd love to do, then my percentage in terms of what I get from the publisher is more in terms of what they pay me. And that's really, it's a numbers game in that way.
So tell me about some of these events that you have going on. Where are you going to be bringing these books, and who's going to be carrying it in the area? Because regardless, we should always go to our independent booksellers, independent stores to buy some whatever we want to buy. We shouldn't go to the big warehouse type stuff when it comes to this. But where are you going to be bringing those books? Tell me about some of these events.
Well, for me, the whole idea of doing sort of this book tour was that, when I was still living in Colorado, I'd planned this over about a 2-week period. I was going to come home for about 10 days, and I was going to do a whole bunch of book stuff during that time. So I had lined all this stuff up earlier in the year, and the concept for me was to line it up with people who I'm friends with, and to, even if you come there and maybe you've already gotten the book, or maybe you decide not even to buy the book, maybe I've introduced you to some really cool places. And I'm lucky because I have, really cool friends who own really cool stuff. So the tour kind of soft starts on Saturday, September 5th at Interstate Gallery in Eastern Market in Detroit. And that's the great Glenn Barr, who did the cover for my book. Glenn's an artist in town, and he has curated a show called Lyric. And what Lyric is he gives artists that he likes, internationally known artists, guys from Detroit, all kinds of people, basically a 12 by 12 space, sort of like a record sleeve. And the idea is that you can create whatever you want in a 12 by 12 space. Just be as creative as you want. And it can be music related in some way. So that's what the Lyric Show is. This is the third one he's done. He does it about every 2 years. So for the closing of the Lyric Show on September 5th, we're going to do a thing there from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. And then really in earnest, the actual hard book sell, hard book launch of events starts on September 10th. So Thursday, September 10th at Book Beat in the evening in Oak Park. Book Beat, great independent bookstore in Oak Park. You should go there. It's great people that run it. And then Saturday the 12th in the afternoon at Green Brain Comics in Dearborn. Other friends of mine who have a great comic shop in Dearborn. Sunday, September 13th in the afternoon at Paperback Writer Books, Weirdsville Records up in Mount Clemens, which gotta rep the east side because that's where I grew up in the up near Mount Clemens. Then Monday the 14th is kind of cool if you're a film person, which obviously listen to Projection Booth. On Monday, September 14th at 7 p.m. at Cinema Detroit, there will be a book signing, but it'll also be a film screening and Q&A. And this is related to Jerry Peterson, also known as Jerry Vile, who's the guy who was the publisher on all three magazines that are covered in the book, which is White Noise, this late 70s Detroit punk rock magazine that was sort of Detroit's version of LA Slash or punk from New York, Fun magazine, which was 86 to 90, which is predates The Onion by 2 years, and from my research could be the first free humor magazine in America. And then the bigger section, because it ran 9 years, is Orbit, which is what I grew up reading in high school, which was around 90 to 99. And Jerry was the publisher on all three of these magazines. But before he did Fun, but right after White Noise, and when he was still sort of in the punk rock scene, he was in a film with Susan Sarandon and Christopher Walken called Who Am I This Time? And it's probably one of the lesser known of the Jonathan Demme films.
Who am I this time?
Who is he? Why, the Deer Hunter's Christopher Walken, of course, teamed up with Susan Sarandon for heart-tugging fun in Who Am I This Time? A clever little Kurt Vonnegut story about love among the awkward. He's an introverted clerk in a hardware store. She's the most insecure worker at the local phone company, and neither one can communicate with the other till they both begin to play romantic roles on stage in amateur theatricals in front of everybody in town.
Okay, terrific, good.
Where does the play acting end and real-life love begin? Somewhere between Shakespeare and Tennessee Williams.
Who are we this time?
From Jonathan Demme, director of Melvin and Howard, Who Am I This Time? A movie for anyone who ever dreamed of being someone else, if only for one perfect performance.
This was made in 1982 for American Playhouse on PBS. And it's a 1 hour film. And we talked a little bit about it on our episode with Keith Gordon for Mother Night, when we were talking about adaptations of Kurt Vonnegut stories, of Kurt Vonnegut novels. And has a great pedigree. I mean, you have Jonathan Demme, early film from him. And also, like I said, Susan Sarandon, Christopher Walken. Bob Ridgely is in it, who you may not know by name, but you might know by face. He was the Colonel in Boogie Nights. And Jerry Vile, like I said, and the score for the film was done by John Cale of obviously the Velvet Underground, but you know, John Cale's been John Cale longer than he was in the Velvet Underground. So that'll be 7 o'clock on Monday, September 14th at Cinema Detroit. We're going to screen the film. Jerry's going to be down there with me signing books, and we're going to do a little Q&A about Who Am I This Time, and sort of his memories of being in the film, if he has any memories. Sometimes he says that he doesn't remember certain things about that, but he's got a couple of funny stories. And then Saturday, September 19th is at Detroit Comics in Ferndale in the afternoon. Another great comic book shop. That's the place that I go to for a local graphic novel club each month. Really great people over there. And then after that, we go what we call outstate from Detroit. So I'll be in Lansing on Wednesday, September 23rd in the evening. This is going to be kind of cool. It's going to be a punk rock publishing roundtable. It'll be myself talking about the Orbit Magazine Anthology, Tesco V of the Meat Men, but also Tesco V started Touch and Go, the hardcore fanzine back in the late 70s and up to the mid 80s. And he has a book that's the complete Touch and Go fanzine, which is a great book if you haven't had a chance to look at that, which was the precursor for the Touch and Go record label, which is now based in Chicago and has been around for over 25 years. And then the other guy that's also on the panel is Steve Miller. No, not that Steve Miller. No, not that Mike White. And Steve Miller has a great book out called Detroit Rock City. And it's a sort of Please Kill Me oral history type story about rock and roll in, as I think the cover says, the world's loudest city, and goes basically from just before the founding of the Grandee scene through the Grandee scene, MC5, the Stooges, Alice Cooper, Ted Nugent, all that stuff. A little bit on the punk rock stuff, which is where we kind of meet up between our two books. And then also into things like the White Stripes, and I think there's even Kid Rock and ICP in there, just like there's in my books. So there's a broad range of stuff in there in Detroit Rock City. So the three of us will be on the panel, Steve Miller, Tesco V, and myself, and we'll be chatting about punk rock in Michigan and all of that stuff, and signing your books over at Schuler Books in Lansing on September 23rd. Friday, October 16th is when I go back to Grand Rapids. I lived out there for 2.5 years, and Grand Rapids is a great city. And I'll be doing the signing at Schuler Books from 7 to 9 on Friday, October 16th. So that'll be a lot of fun. And as for out of the state of Michigan, I'm currently working on trying to line up at least one, maybe two LA signings in November. We don't know exactly where and when yet. I've been talking to one place, and they seem to want to do it, but they're trying to do kind of the same thing that I'm doing in Lansing with a panel, and they're trying to figure out the schedules of the other people on the panel. Also in November, you're going to want to keep your ears and your eyes peeled for a possibility of a big, well, we are going to have a party for the book. We decided not to have a book launch party in September, but more closer to the Thanksgiving holiday. And the location on that is going to be revealed soon, and it's going to be super cool. And when I find out, you'll find out. And hopefully if you're in the Detroit area or nearby, maybe you can come on out. It'll be a lot of fun.
You've got all these events. I know you have Facebook events set up, just like how we have Facebook events set up all the time for our shows.
Right.
If folks aren't your personal friend on Facebook, where can they go?
Well, if you want to follow the book, the name of the book on Facebook is the Orbit Magazine Anthology. You just type that into the search. Or I think it's facebook.com/Orbit Book Detroit. I also have a blog where you can find me writing about random thoughts about the book. And also there's a thing with review tab, and you can find out more about it and the events, and that's at orbitbookdetroit.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at orbitbook. And recently it was kind of cool. Our good friends over at BB&BC, which is, if you're not hip to the lingo, Badasses, Boobs, and Body Counts, did Detroit 9000 and Dolomite with you, sir. And as part of it, I was supposed to be on the Detroit 9000 episode, but I had a publicity commitment, which I'll explain in a minute. And Mike was like, I really want you on the show. And I said, all right, we can do that, but I've got to record it now and all this. I can't really do how you traditionally do the show, because of when you had it planned. Mike and Iris record on a certain night, and I was going to be busy. And he gave me a nice half hour on the show. So Detroit 9000 episode, it was kind of fun. We talked about Detroit 9000. We talked about Detroit and film a little bit. And we talked about Orbit and the Orbit book, and why film people like us might be interested also in the Orbit book. If you have no interest in sort of Detroit, which I find completely, how could you not? It's the world's most fascinating city and exciting city, as I say. The big connection, obviously, when we talk about Orbit and the Orbit book to film, is the great reviews that are in there related to Chris Gore, his early stuff, right when he was starting out with Film Threat, and then also Paul Zimmerman, who started off at Orbit and also was a partner with Jerry on White Noise, and also worked at Fun as well. And he went on to be editor of Film Threat, because him and Gore worked together at Thomas Video. So once again, Revenge of the Video Store nerds. And because of Gore and because of Zimmerman and because of Orbit giving Mr. Tarantino his first cover for his first film, Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino wears a Orbit t-shirt in Pulp Fiction. And you can read all of that early writing that Paul did about Reservoir Dogs and how it really knocked him on his ass when he saw it at Toronto in 1992 in the book and really get a flavor as to what that was all about.
Hey, let's take a little break here. I'm going to read a letter from Eric Peterson. What are your favorite films discovered via the projection booth episodes?
I had to say American Hippie in Israel. That's one that, God, I can't believe it was 3 years ago. Really kind of knocked me in my ass. I really enjoyed that. And I bought the Grindhouse Blu-ray, and I just thought it was a great film. I thought it was very enjoyable. The other one that I really liked, and this was thanks to you and I, was some familiarity with his work through War Game, was Punishment Park. Peter Watkins, Punishment Park. I thought
that's one of the first ones we did together.
Yeah, I mean, that one still sticks with me. It's one of those ones that, the more I look around the world, the more I go, ugh, man, woof. Going through the list here, I think Blast of Silence was great. Really, really enjoyed that. I mean, if you haven't listened to the Blast of Silence episode and you haven't seen Blast of Silence yet, you really just need to listen to Blast of Silence just to hear Alan Barron get on you on the use of the word folks.
We're rolling. This is the good one. Take 5.
Most folks,
Once again.
Most folks have heard about.
All right, that's good. Good, very nice.
That's why folks call it finger. That's why folks call it finger.
Sounds good.
That's why folks call it finger licking good. That's why folks call it. That's why folks call it finger licking good. That's why folks call it finger licking good. I'm not getting anywhere with this damn thing.
Okay, fine.
Like, that is like, if we're going to do a classic sort of like sections of interviews with people, like if we were ever going to like sit down and go, okay, what are like the greatest hits of the interviews? Just the whole thing where he tries to correct you on the use of folks. It's funny and painful all at the same time.
Well, I'm going to thank you for one. The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie was a lot of fun. I don't know if I would have watched that had we not had to do it for the show. Uh-huh. It was one of those that had been hanging around. I think I bought it on VHS when a video store was going out of business, and it was unwatched for years and years. So I thank you for that one. It was good to have that exposure because I had only seen just a limited amount of Buñuel films before that. So it was really good to be able to see where you're coming from with that kind of later period, because I was only really familiar with, Un Chien Andalou, that kind of stuff. So that was a good one. I also have to say Executive Action was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That really blew my socks off. And then Satyricon. I don't even remember how we got around to Satyricon. That was like part of the Roman month, right? You picked that one out.
Yeah, which I had never really seen. I think I'd seen a part of it, but it was just the whole idea of let's just do a whole month on Roman films. And I knew I didn't want to do like sword and sandal stuff. So it was like, okay, what stuff do we have? Because I think it was the transition piece out of Roman month, wasn't it, Titus? So that's where we get into the Shakespeare stuff. Satyricon is one of those films where it's either, I don't think there is sort of a halfway. I think you either really like it or you don't. And Fellini's kind of like that. I think Buñuel's kind of like that. I mean, when I look at the list also, I have to say I got to thank you and Andrew, and it's just been dividends for me in terms of all the stuff that I've learned about Wang Wang. I mean, I don't think I ever would have watched For Your Height Only. I don't even think I would have known what For Your Height Only is. I don't think I would have known who Wang Wang is. To me, Filipino film always would have been just, the old women in prison films, which, if I want the voice. I think I talked about this on that episode. It's like I want the voice of the guy who was doing the trailer voiceovers for Corman in the 70s. Women in cages, all of this overdone, stuff. Women in cages, passions, bound up, and all this in the jungles, and all this. I mean, this guy just has this great voice. But that's all I would have known of Filipino film. So For Your Height Only, I got to give my hats off to you guys. And, if you haven't seen, search for Wang Wang. I mean, get it. It's out there now. It is one of the best documentaries you're going to watch. It's up there. I think the other one that you reintroduced me to, which wasn't on that episode, it was under the former regime, is Head. You really like, between that episode and then getting the BBS box set from Criterion and watching Head, like actually sitting down watching Head, I have gained an appreciation of the Monkees in a way that I don't think I would have if it wasn't on the show. So I thank you for that as well.
I think one of the most fun episodes that we did, which I want to say that you were the one that brought this to the fore because of our interview with Sharon Mitchell. And you were like, we need to talk, we need to do 2 Sharon Mitchell films because we have her for one. So we have her for Smoker. Now let's talk to her about another film, and that being Water Power. Water Power was one of the most fun episodes.
That's funny because to me, like, Water Power is, there's so many wrong things with that film. Like, and what I mean by that is, I think we talked about it on the episode, because I think it's bound up in these ideas of you can't do that on a film. Like, it's so, like, it has, like in much the same way that I like Blood-Sucking Freaks. Like, it's offensive to people. And why is it offensive to people? Well, because it has sexuality in it, and then it has rape. It's not rape, but it's like rape on film. And that's very hard, I think, for us to kind of wrap our heads around, and be like we talked about on the show. It's like, why is Taxi Driver okay? But if you do like Taxi Driver, but with like sex, then it becomes like, whoa, it's like nuclear material. Like, stay away from it. It's radioactive. Like I said, I'm just going alphabetical down the list here. And I have to say Simon is one of them. That's one that I just feel is really underappreciated. I think that what Alan Arkin does in that film is incredible. I mean, you can really see his improv chops. You can really see all of that training that he had from Second City. And I think it's a fun little film. I mean, when we talk about something like Putney Swope or Watermelon Man, or some of the stuff that I really like, that it's definitely stuck in its era, I think that in a way Simon's kind of stuck in its era because it's talking about certain points from the 70s in a particular way. But I still think it's quite good. And I think it's underappreciated. I don't think people get a chance to really engage with it that much. It's one of those films that I think you either know it or you don't.
Well, it did just play on TCM a few weeks ago. As we're recording this, they're doing their, I can't even remember, the Month of Stars or whatever it is, and every day is dedicated to a different person, and one day was Alan Arkin Day. And Simon was amongst those films, so that gave me a little bit of hope when it comes to hopefully people are rediscovering Simon. But I will say, I completely agree with you that it is underappreciated. It's one of those films I want to say came out on the Warner Brothers, like, Burn on Demand kind of thing. So it doesn't even have, like, for me, a proper release, proper in quotes. And even our episode really didn't get that many numbers to it, which is really a shame, because I really thought that interview with Marshall Brickman was fantastic, talking about those early days for him, talking about how Marshall Brickman has a connection to dueling banjos was one of my favorite things. And so I really, if people just listen to the episode just for the interview, I really think that you'll enjoy that. So let's go back to Eric's questions here. Can we expect more theme months like the Noir November last year? I don't see why not. Yeah. I mean, we do different things, I mean, we're going to do another Noir November coming up here in November. Imagine that. I almost thought that January was going to shape up to be movies that people generally don't consider to be that good. Like, we were hitting Showgirls and The Last Dragon and a couple others in there. And then the way things worked out, I had to move one movie out of that month and move in Salvador, because we're going to be talking to Matt Seitz about his new book. And I'm really hoping like hell we can get maybe Stone for that, maybe Woods. Maybe if I start talking about how he just uses cocaine like crazy on Twitter, he'll pay attention to me. But so far, nothing.
People don't like to be called out for that, sadly.
So yeah, we can definitely have more theme months. Rob came up with Roman August,
right,
and he came up with Shakespeare September. Noir November, I think, might have been mine because of the Noir Fest. Yeah. But you are programming Noir November this year, and we are actually doing 4 horror films in October, a Shocktober, if you will.
Yeah, it's we're doing something a little different there. I mean, my idea this year with Noir November was to do noir with a foreign accent. So we're going to do foreign film that is noir. So, as a matter of fact, I got to start figuring out who I'm going to get as guests on those things, because I've got a feeling that they're mostly going to be authors of books as opposed to directors and actors, because I think most of the people who I'd like to talk to are dead or don't speak English. So I'm going to try and see who I can get for those. But I'm really excited about that, because I really want to do this comparison piece with you with Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai, and Less Samurai, the Melville film, and Elevator to the Gallows is just an amazing film. And especially, I mean, even if you don't like the film Elevator to the Gallows, which I don't think you're going to have that problem, the jazz score, the improv jazz score from Miles Davis is just legendary. It's just an amazing piece. So we're going to do some great stuff there. And, more theme months as they come. It's, for us, it kind of, the reason why we do them, the reason why we don't do them, is that I often look at the shows as their own individual thing, meaning that much the way that, and I know you're a big fan of the book series, sort of the 33 and a third book series, Mike. Mm-hmm. I kind of look at what we do as kind of like that. Like, each one is sort of its own self-contained unit about that one album, or, however we perceive that to be. And we don't really tie them together all that much, That's why I try to stay away from, and we've tried to stay away from, and this is the reason why we're doing Ego Fest. We try to stay away from talking about what we're doing now and sort of our lives and all the things that make it really dated. Because I like the idea of, we create an episode, it's really good, it says everything that we really need to say about it at that time, and then it can stand for a while. It's like someone wrote a book, and it'll be good for 3 years, 4 years, however often, whenever you pick it up, as opposed to it being much more ephemeral, which to me I think is the one beautiful value that we have with podcasts over radio. And as a 14-year veteran of radio can be very ephemeral. It's all about what's happening now. And what podcasts can allow you to do is to create something that it doesn't really matter when you hear it. It's just sort of it's going to be as good now as it'll be as good for you in 5 years.
At least we can hope.
That's what I try to do. I mean, we've talked about going back and doing updates on some of the shows, like actually doing a whole new episode or doing an addendum. One that I would like to do, to be honest, would be to redo in part my first episode that I was on, which was Bloodsucking Freaks, because there's a new Blu-ray. It's not new. It's been out over a year now, of Bloodsucking Freaks, which includes additional material and sort of changes some of the story a little bit. It's a little bit different. And I remember having a Twitter conversation with Eli Roth, who's a big fan of that film, and was trying to see if I could convince him to come on and talk about it with us. So, I don't know, we'll see. But there's kind of part of me that feels like, it's like stories of the Buddhist monks who do the sand paintings. They get the nice colorful sand and they make the beautiful image on the floor or the table or whatever they're working on, and it takes them like a month, and they just sweep it up and throw it in the river. It's just the idea of what you learn in the process of doing it, and then you just create it and you're done and you move on to the next thing. So I don't necessarily know if we have all that much interest in going back and rehashing things either.
Ain't going back.
Yeah, you gotta keep forward. It's like a shark, otherwise it dies.
For each of you, this is still coming from Eric Peterson, for each of you, 3 Holy Grail films, ones that you want to see but have yet to find.
I'm going to let you start this one because you probably have a laundry list, and to be honest, I'm more like, these are the movies I need to watch, as opposed to, man, I really would love to see that, and I can't seem to find a copy.
I have no idea if this movie's going to be good or bad or not, but I've been wanting to see a movie called Human, which is like human, but with a dash between the HU and the man, by Jerome Lapersoise. The guy, he directed a short documentary called Les Marines, I believe. And this was from 1975, and it stars Terrence Stamp as Terrence Stamp. And we both know that Terrence Stamp was making some interesting movies in the early part of his career. Still makes interesting films, but he was kind of out there. And as a matter of fact, I was just looking today about thinking about scheduling a Teorama Visitor Q episode for one of these days, because I would really like to compare those two films and any of these kind of like Man Who Came to Dinner and Fuck the Entire Family kind of movie. So that's one of them. To see this movie, like I said, I've seen posters for it, I've seen write-ups of it, but the movie is just not there. It could be horrible, but I really want to see that one. The next one is a film that I thought was an urban legend for a long time, but I think that this thing is real, and it's probably just locked away in a vault someplace. That is Smokey and the Bandit 3, Smokey is the Bandit. And that was Smokey and the Bandit 3, kind of the movie that we know today, where Burt Reynolds wasn't going to be in the movie. So he makes a cameo appearance at the end, if you remember, and I'm sure you guys do remember how Smokey and the Bandit 3 runs. Smokey and the Bandit 3, instead of having Burt Reynolds throughout the entire thing, now has Jerry Reed in the main character. But for a little while, it was Jackie Gleason as the Bandit. So he was playing Buford Justice and the Bandit both at the same time, and I hear it as one of the most surrealistic disasters that was ever brought to the screen.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like the scene in Female Trouble, where Divine plays both Dawn Davenport and the guy who rapes her and ends up having the kid Earl. Yeah, so that's just notching up the surrealism there.
And I think the third film that I would really want to see is one called The Smut Peddler, which was directed by somebody named Warner Rose back in 1965. It is a sexploitation film, and I know that a couple reels have been found, and they're available via a Something Weird compilation, and I just recently found that out because every once in a while I will post and try to find the whole thing, and so far it is still MIA. But the preview for The Smut Peddler is one of the best previews that has ever been put to film. But to have this guy who narrates this thing, the literal smut peddler himself, it is a thing of glory. If you can, track down just the trailer for The Smut Peddler and tell me that wouldn't be a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, mine is more, I'm at a point where I just need to be able to have more time to watch things. That's the thing that really makes me sad. Because I think the most profound sadness is going to be the fact that I'm never really going to get to read everything and hear everything and see everything that I want. It's just, there's no way it's going to happen. There's been a lot of talk recently about Jerry Lewis putting The Day the Clown Cried into the Library of Congress, and then you can watch it in 10 years, which I'm sure he believes he'll be dead by then, so he won't have to hear whatever. I just want to see that. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, because I just want to see what the big deal is. I'm sure that once it's released in some manner, it won't be that big a deal. But to me, it's just fascinating that he's withholding it because of that. So it's, I guess we'll find out in 10 years. So that's the only other thing. The one that I wish people could get the chance to see, which we had a chance to see, is and we did on the show, is Nothing Lasts Forever. I think Nothing Lasts Forever is great. That really makes me sad. And I think that kind of transitions me, at least, to the second question that Eric has here, is 3 films that you think deserve a Blu-ray or DVD release. I would say Nothing Lasts Forever. I think they should make a deal with Criterion. There's so much great stories, and the idea also that they could have as extras all those Tom Schiller shorts from SNL and put all that stuff on there. And, I think that would be great. Really give it what it deserves. And then the other 2, I think, are the same ones that I brought up before it could have been on another show, or may have been another Ego Fest, where it was, what do you think deserves a Blu-ray or a DVD release? And I'm just going to pound the desk for pound. I mean, I talk about it constantly. I'm a really bad VHS dub that I haven't watched in probably 8 years because I don't have a VCR anymore. But that deserves to be cleaned up, just like all the other Bob Downey stuff that was released by Criterion on the Eclipse label about a year and a half ago. And that should be put out. And then the other one is, since Fantoma, I think, has gone out of business. If not, they're not really doing a whole hell of a lot. Just Coffin Joe films. All of them. I remember having a conversation with, I think it was Don May or Jerry Chandler, his partner over at Synapse, about the Coffin Joe stuff. And sadly, I think that they had been offered it, or they had looked at the materials, and they said it was just in too bad a shape. They didn't feel that they felt that you would have to do like a full on restoration of the materials, because Brazil didn't take care of their films, and therefore I think they've passed on any opportunity to put out the Jose Mujica Marin's material in the United States. At least Synapse, who I think would have done an amazing job with it, and that just kind of breaks my heart, because the Coffin Joe films are great, but there's a lot of stuff that he did that is not him as Coffin Joe, but as, in other ways. I mean, there's about a half dozen other movies that I've seen that Something Weird put out on VHS years ago, and ever since Thomas Video went out of business, I've never been able to see him again. So I would love the ability to sit down and rewatch all of that stuff, because I think singularly as a talent, I think Mujica Marins is just an amazing filmmaker and doesn't really get all the credit he really deserves for doing something that's that sort of subversive in that environment under a military dictatorship.
I think for me, the one movie that I'm always going to be singing the praises of, and I was almost going to say until it gets a DVD release, but even then afterwards, I'm still going to be singing the praises, is Crime Wave. We did an episode on Crime Wave early on. I've talked to Jonathan Ball about his book on Crime Wave. I mean, it's just one of those movies that is amazing and just gets better every time I've watched it, and I've probably watched it 100 and 150 times. I mean, it is so good, and people really need to see it. And there's been movement afoot as far as things go, as far as, getting all the rights and everything. Apparently, Echo Bridge Entertainment is just kind of holding everything up, not being responsive to anything. It's been restored. It played at Toronto International Film Festival last year. It toured around some places, and just trying to get those rights freed up has been an impossible thing. Our good buddy Josh Johnson has been really working on this stuff, and hey, that would be fantastic. If I can see that movie hit Blu-ray in my lifetime, I would be very happy.
And you're going to throw something at me because, I have not seen it.
Well, it was a PR show. It was pre-Rob. So when this thing hits Blu-ray, maybe that's when we can revisit. So then I'll force you to watch it.
Yeah, which, is fine. I mean, the only thing I know is that there's that image that sometimes you'll put up, and it's the guy in the cowboy hat with sort of the bug eyes thing going on. And that's about all I know.
Dr. Jolly. So I've got some good news coming up here pretty soon. by the time this episode drops, it'll just be a few days away from me hitting the road, driving up to Toronto, and going to FanExpo. Now, I did FanExpo 2 years ago, I think it was, and there was a horror podcast panel, even though we're not necessarily a horror podcast. I was on this panel.
Are you sure it wasn't a horrible podcast panel?
It might have been.
Yeah, just the worst podcasters ever all up on stage in one place.
Yeah, Last Chance Lance and Stuart Feedback Andrews were up there, so maybe. But then what leads me to believe that it was a horror podcast was that the ladies from the Faculty of Horror were up there as well, and they do a pretty darn good show.
Okay.
It was a good panel, but it had horrible attendance because it was the last panel on the last day of FanExpo.
Yeah, it's no good.
No, there was nobody there. Nobody wanted to stick around to hear a bunch of podcasters jaw on about stuff. But we did get some people in the audience, so we appreciate it. But anyway, this year I'm going back. They've talked me into going back, and I will be hosting 2 Q&A sessions. And I don't think you get 2 celebrities that were more different. On Friday, September 4th at 5:45 p.m., I will be talking to Orlando Jones, who, of course, I know from Double Take with Eddie Griffin. Definitely one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. But it has a great... a friend of mine, Mike Thompson, gave me a great idea. As we're watching the movie, at one point he leaned over to me and he said, what if they're actually the same person, like Tyler Durden and the narrator? And that changed the whole movie for me.
You just wrecked Fight Club for everyone, Mike. No, I mean, for me, he's the 7-Up Yours guy.
Hey, I'm the guy who makes 7-Up. I also write the advertising. I just came up with a great new slogan. Make 7-Up yours. Make 7-Up yours. Thank you, I appreciate it. Make 7-Up yours, baby. People just love it. Make 7-Up yours! Hey, my man, make 7-Up yours. Make 7-Up yours. Same to you. Same to me. You see, it's catching on already. Hey, make 7-Up yours, man. Are you gonna stick them up yours? Oh, we going global with this baby.
And then the other person who I'm going to be hosting a Q&A with is Danny Trejo.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 11:45 a.m. on Saturday, just prior to noon, September 5th. And, yeah, talking to Mr. Trejo and taking questions from the audience. So I will definitely be asking him about his roles in Runaway Train and The Hidden and Bubble Boy.
You got to get in there on, asking him about hanging out with Eddie Bunker, man.
Well, yeah, that's where Runaway Train comes in.
See, I think from the story I heard, they were both in prison together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear that. I loved Eddie Bunker. I mean, we talked about him a lot on our Straight Time episode, and definitely recommend that folks check that out. But, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm thinking about getting, 23 heart tattoos and then leaning over to him and saying, maybe you can be number 24. September 4th and 5th at the FanExpo in Toronto, I'll be hosting these 2 Q&A sessions, and I hope that they go well.
Do you know if we may be able to get audio of that and put that up for our humble and friendly listeners?
I'm hoping so. I'm really hoping so.
All right. That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, FanExpo is one of those things that I've always wanted to go to. It's not too far away. I mean, Toronto is kind of your 2 choices when you live in Detroit. You can either go to Toronto or you can go to Chicago. And either one's 5 hours away. The only thing that's a pain in the ass with going to Toronto these days is basically everything since September 11th is a pain in the ass dealing with the border. So basically strap yourself in for an extra hour trying to get through that. So, email, Scott Cameron. I've been listening to the site for over a year or so now. I think a shout out to if this movie initially brought me over. Looking forward to November to see what the noir choices will be, but just wanted to drop a line and thank you guys for all the great shows and all the work you put into them. I'm 53 and have been a movie geek my whole life, so when you do a show like the recent one on Night Moves. It was like being part of a club that gets it. Night Moves wasn't a hit, wasn't popular, but after seeing it on TV around 1977, I would try to catch it whenever it was on, had it on VHS, grabbed it the day it was out on DVD. There's a ton of movies like that you've covered. Many of them are favorites, from Once Upon a Time in the West and The Stuntman to ones I wasn't familiar with, like last November's Blast of Silence, which immediately became a must-see. I like the eclectic nature of the choices, not just the famous titles, but the ones from 1977's Sorcerer or Miami's Blues, which make a movie geek like me smile. Speaking of smile, how about covering Michael Ritchie's Smile from 1975? You've already covered his prime cut. Recent podcast on The Rocketeer was another example. Excellent effort. Love the interviews with Joe Polito and Joe Johnston. There's probably a million films that I'd love to see covered, like Big Trouble in Little China or Emperor of the North Pole or The Train, and on and on. But anyway, thank you and everyone involved for going deep, and sometimes even Conan deep, which is a reference to the 7-Hour Show, to make podcasts about movies go way beyond what others are doing. Take care, Scott Cameron. Thanks, Scott. The reason why we do it, and I think the reason why there's this obsessive quality, and I've talked about this on other shows when I've guested on there, is that ultimately it all comes from a place of being a fan. We just love movies. And because we love movies so much, that's where it really comes out of. I mean, I had a really nice conversation, speaking of, and you'll hear this conversation coming up early next year when we do Pump Up the Volume, and spent about an hour talking to the director and writer of that, Alan Moyle, and about halfway through, he was only supposed to talk to me for about 20 minutes, and his wife was waiting to go to IKEA, and he says to me, I'd rather just sit here and talk about movies with you as opposed to going with my wife to IKEA. And he goes, you want to know why that is? And I'm like, I don't have a clue. You don't like IKEA? And he's like, no. He's like, you actually know what you're talking about, and you're fun to talk to, and you're knowledgeable. When I say, we're talking about this or we're talking about that idea, you know exactly where I'm going, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think that's really what the both of us really enjoy about the show, because Lord knows this isn't a money-making venture. With the amount of time that we put into these things and the amount of effort that we do, and just to get the emails, like the email we got from you, Scott, and others talking about how they enjoy the show, it's that's really the payment. That's a little extra. The payment to me is the ability to talk to someone like Alan Moyle, or and I've talked about it before, Robert Downey Sr., or all the great filmmakers and writers and people that we've had on the show, and the ability to talk to them about what they do. That to me is the payment. That's where I feel lucky. That's where I feel blessed in a way, because and just to have an opportunity to ask somebody questions about something that I really enjoy. And I remember the same sort of excitement and joy when I was in high school. I had this thing about sort of like standing by the stage door. Like as soon as the concert was over, we'd go outside and we'd wait. And sometimes you wait an hour, sometimes you wait an hour and a half. But eventually, like, the band would come out because they got to go to the bus. And sometimes they would take a few minutes, sign an autograph, get a picture, whatever. And just the ability to kind of have a few minutes to go, hey, I really like this song, or I really had a good time with that, or tell me about this or tell me about that. Just to have that moment is really cool, because you get sort of a behind the scenes look, sort of a personal take on it. You get to ask the questions you want to ask, and I hope in a way, sort of by projection booth, that we're asking the questions you want, that we're getting new insights for you that you haven't heard before.
I've got good news. That gum you like is going to come back in style. No, I've got good news for Scott. We are doing Smile, and we announced that just a few weeks ago. I don't know if it was before or after the email, but we are doing Smile, and that is going to be a pretty good episode. It's not going to drop until, get your bong out, 4/20/2016. But I think it's going to be worth the wait because we are very happy to announce that we have landed what I consider to be a really big interview, and that was Bruce Dern is going to be on that episode. And actually, Bruce talked to me for about 90 minutes, and I think I'm going to cut part of that out and release it early because he talks a lot about working on the Hateful Eight. So I think I'll release that before Hateful Eight comes out so folks can kind of have that a little bit more in context, and then leave the rest of the Smile stuff and a couple of other things that he talked to me about for that episode. We also are going to have Nicholas Pryor on that episode. He was one of the other main characters in Smile. The guy's got like 160 credits to his name. He's been around since the days of live television. He's done a ton of great things. And I'm hoping there's another couple people that we're going to be able to get for that show. I'm not going to say it and jinx it, but I've been working on one for, I think, a year now. And it's getting pushed and gets pushed and gets pushed. I thought that I had it for next week, but it got pushed out again. And the other one, I actually got a response from this person's agent, and it sounds like it might be good. So here's hoping that sometime between now and April, we'll land another few more interviews for this episode and really give Scott a reason to smile.
You know, the one thing that I really like about what you did there, sir, is not talk about the people that we don't have yet. Because I'm a big, it's not a jinx issue for me. It's always been a matter of, I always want to like overperform, you know, right. Because if we go ahead and say, hey, we're doing to do this, and then it's like the episode comes out and we only got like one person of the six that we talked about, then it seems like we are falling down on the job. And rather people go, wow, that's amazing. Look at all the people they got.
Under promise and over deliver.
That's what we try to do, and for free. But there are some folks that find what we do very delightful and are more than willing to pony up a couple of dollars every now and then.
Yeah, you know, we asked for money a couple months ago, and some folks really came through. I feel guilty asking for money every single week, but it almost seems like we kind of have to, just because we don't have regular listeners. I mean, we've got a core group of people that are listening from week to week to week, but then we do have the one-off kind of folks. So people that will come in for like an Alien 3 episode, and then maybe they don't necessarily come back. So if we don't extend the fuck you, pay me kind of thing for every episode, sometimes we miss out. But we did have a lot of folks kind of take us up on this whole thing. We explained that, you know, this isn't a money-making business, but it does cost money to do things like host the files, to, you know, pay for our Skype calls to Australia, these kind of things, to, you know, have our IMDb Pro membership where we can look up agents and these kind of things. So all of these various things, I think I should probably start actually like keeping a record of that stuff, and then, you know, be able to say, hey, every year the projection booth costs us this much. You know, things like Dropbox sharing, where we need to have a bigger Dropbox because we're, you know, throwing around these files, and these WAV files get to be huge sometimes, especially with like a 7-hour show. So we need to have these things available to us. So, but I did want to thank the people that stepped up. We had some good payments here from Michael Brooks, from Pecco Arnio, from Alvin Akarma. And Alvin, I don't think he didn't pay us off. This isn't a payola thing, but we should definitely think about doing his movie one of these days, Lethal Force, which to me is one of the best action movies ever created. And then also Monty Buckles gave us some cash too. And then our good friend Jonathan Melville, who has a new book out. It's Seeking Perfection, the unofficial guide to Tremors. This guy, before we ever actually met Jonathan, and I won't say physically met because we still haven't physically met the guy, but before we even talked about him coming on the show and doing a Tremors episode and, you know, really trying to help promote his book, because it is an amazing book that people really need to check out. I will say that Jonathan has ponied up and he subscribed via PayPal, which anybody can do. And it's really odd. He gives us $2.20 every month. And I'm not sure why $2.20. I'm thinking maybe that's what a pound converts to or something. But it's pretty awesome to get $2.20 like clockwork every month. Jonathan Melville just giving a little bit towards the projection booth and paying his way for free entertainment. I love it.
And, I got to give a shout out to Jonathan Melville, because if you haven't listened to the Tremors episode, please do, because it's great. And pick up his book. I'm looking forward to getting it myself. The other thing that I got to give him a shout out for, and pardon my partisanship here on the ethnicity background, but good Scotsman, like my mom is from Scotland. And Jonathan Melville, with his monthly donation to the projection booth, proves that Scottish people are not cheap. Okay? There is a grocery store chain, and they used to have one in Detroit called the Thrifty Scot. Okay? Jonathan Melville is the generous Scot. So I just want to give him a little shout out and thank my fellow countrymen.
I read his book, before we did the Tremors episode. I read what he had at that point, which seemed like a finished book to me. But in the months after we did the Tremors episode, things kind of blew up for him. So he managed to get that Kevin Bacon interview that he thought would never happen.
Nice.
So now he's got that for the book. So it makes it even better, which I didn't think the book could be better. But it is fantastic. It is everything that you never knew you needed to know about the Tremors franchise, which surprisingly is pretty close to the quote on the back of the book, which is attributed to me.
Look at that. See?
Whoa!
How did that happen?
So let's go back to where you were living for a long time, out to Colorado, and we've got an email from Jason in Denver.
Jason in Denver. Greetings, Mike and Rob. Well, you asked. Alien and Aliens are tied simply because they're so very different. One is horror and impending doom. The other is rip-roaring sci-fi action film. Since Aliens is the second R-rated film I saw in the theater, 14-year-old me would choose that as my favorite. Nowadays, though, I find myself drawn to Alien more. Both are fantastic films and high replay value. I saw Alien 3 as a new release and wasn't thrilled with it, but I didn't hate it. Since I had followed its production history, it prepared me for the final mess, unlike my friend who declared it a piece of shit as the credits rolled. Alien 4 is odd. The Alien vs. Predator films are garbage, yet I'm compelled to own them for the pleasure I derive from some of the monster scenes and creature design. Prometheus looks great, but Damien Lindelof's changes in the original script make it a maddening endeavor for anyone who paid attention while watching the first Alien film. So a few questions. Do you guys actually get hate mail? If so, any funny ones you can share? Oh, this is just a joke to a certain extent where I just know that there are certain hot button topics. Like, for example, and I haven't read all the emails yet, as you can tell, because I'm kind of cold reading these things and I'm stumbling. I was willing to bet that after we did Star Wars that I was going to get hate mail. Because I know that there are certain things that have huge fandoms and people get upset. To me, the funniest piece of hate mail, and it wasn't even really hate mail, it was hate comment, is actually on the first episode I was on. And I'm just going to paraphrase because I don't have it up in front of me. If you go to the Bloodsucking Freaks episode on projection-booth.com, just go to the past episodes and go to Bloodsucking Freaks, someone said that they hated that episode because it sounded like a feminist socialist lecture by a college professor or something like that. And I just thought it was hilarious. They're like, I wanted to hear you talk about an exploitation film, not some feminist socialist lecture. So I thought that was kind of funny. Do you remember any other funny hate mails? The only one that I remember was this constant back and forth between some conspiracy theory guy and him ranting about how awful James Randi is on the once again hate commenting on Projection Booth on the An Honest Liar episode.
Well, we did get that recent one. What movie was it for? You awarded them the Commenter of the Month award or something. It was...
Where'd you get that 2x4 pulled out of your ass or something like that?
Yeah.
Stick out of your ass. Yeah. I think it may have been Alien 3.
Okay.
I think it may have been Alien 3 comment. And it was geared towards you. They were like upset with you. I thought they were going to hit me with the bat, but they hit you with it instead.
We got some great comments through a third-party source that were just amazing. There's a website out there called avpgalaxy.net, and the fine people over there posted our Alien 3 episode, keeping with the alien theme of this email, I suppose. But we very rarely get comments over on projection-booth.com. It is the rare time that we get comments on there, other than like the weird spam comments where it's like, this is good post, here is link to my site, like some of those weird things. But we got like 70 some comments over at avpgalaxy.net, and I just pulled up the site just to see if there were more, and there were more than last time that I looked. So I'll just read one of those, and it's pretty good. Listen the first 20 minutes. So there we go.
Is that one of those weird spam posts? Because it doesn't know English?
The first 20 minutes. Can't get through the cynicism and stupid blind hate those guys got for this masterpiece of movie. And cynicism, by the way, is CINISM. So at least I got the C right. At least it wasn't with an S. Seems like they don't really understand the franchise at all. Like in the moment they all agree the prisoners should, quote, act more like bad guys. I mean, WTF? First off, they're a small group isolated by many years, so they found a religion to fill their empty lives. Beside that, they stay on that planet where all the rest just go to a new prison. So yeah, apparently they couldn't even make it past the first 20 minutes of the episode, but they felt very necessary to weigh in. So these are hilarious. These are some amazing comments. I really have to recommend checking that out. And apparently we did not do a very good job on our Alien 3 episode, at least according to the fine folks over here.
Well, it's just what happens,
Yeah.
I mean, and to be honest, I have no problem with hate mail. I mean, that means at least people are paying attention, and that's all really I ask for.
Yeah, and we don't generally tend to get too much hate mail because it takes effort for people to actually sit down and write a hate letter to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it was this old thing. They had done research into Howard Stern and I think maybe even Rush Limbaugh, and they found people that hated them actually listened longer than those who liked them. So I don't know what that says. I think that's part of the mentality of people who sit there and like hammer each other on Facebook or Twitter all day. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy.
Well, I will say that I've listened to a lot of the Wolfpack podcasts.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
And I've probably sent more people over to their site than they ever gotten otherwise.
You're just a masochist. You're just a masochist.
I am.
Like I had a friend of mine who used to create a magazine years ago, and he said to me, he goes, part of the reason why I gave it up is that when you spend that much time researching someone you hate, you may as well just do a fanzine. He goes, because you know more about them than anyone else does. So it's like, I'm tired of, spending my time hating on things. I'm just going to go do something positive. So the other question that we have here from our good man in Denver, he says, curious if Mike has taken the HD TV and Blu-ray plunge. I do recall him saying that he wasn't interested in doing so. Besides the original untouched Star Wars, what titles would move him to get onto a Blu-ray player?
So I have owned a Blu-ray player for probably a year and a half now, but the TV that I have is so old that it can't connect to the Blu-ray player. So my mom recently upgraded her television set and had her old TV, which was an HD TV that we got her for Christmas probably 4 years ago. I think that sounds right. Maybe 5. And she gave that back to me. Rather than selling it, she gave back the television. So now I have an HD TV. I haven't hooked it up yet, though. It's been sitting in my bedroom for probably 6 months. So eventually I will hook up this new TV, and that will allow me to hook up the Blu-ray player. So,
you know what's funny is now I'm in the opposite camp.
Really?
Yeah, because when I left Colorado, I sold basically everything, and now I don't have an HD TV, but I still have my Blu-ray player. I did keep that. So now I'm just watching everything on my computer right now because I have no other way to do it. It's not a laptop or anything. It's like a big iMac that I've had for about 4 years. But that's basically the only way I can watch movies right now. And, eventually I'll get a TV again, but I'm not, I got other things I got to take care of first. So as long as I can still watch on the iMac here, I'm good to go.
Yeah, so as far as what titles would move me to get a Blu-ray player, yeah, those titles have already come out. There's a bunch of things that I have sitting upstairs on the television cabinet that are all Blu-ray, things like Rock and Roll High School, things like The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. There's a bunch of stuff up there. So the titles are there. The motivation is there for just about everything other than hooking up the TV. So maybe hearing this when I edit this episode will shame me into finally putting that TV in its place.
Well, there you go. Moving down again to our good man, Jason in Denver. He says, does anyone really believe the Charles Band film was lost, in quotes, by the Italian lab? Does lost, in quotes, really mean unpaid bill, in quotes, in Italian?
Yeah, I'm not going to slag on Charles Band. Enough people already slag on Charles Band. And he was nice enough to take the time to talk to us. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's one of those kind of, embarrassing situations or not, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for now anyway, until some middling kid comes in and blows the lid off of any kind of, story that there might happen to be. But for now, whatever. Charles Band was great enough to come on, talk to us about some of his films. I love the Transfers episode. He was a real mensch for doing that for us. So, yeah, I'm not going to really give that one the time of day.
All right. Well, thanks for the fantastic show. Take care. Jason in Denver. P.S. Attached a pic of my small alien shrine. Pictures, the backbone of all podcasts. We should put that up. We should put that up on Facebook, yeah.
Yeah. Well, either on Facebook or over at projection-boot.com. Regardless, we will have that picture available for folks.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we always appreciate people taking the time. I mean, that must have taken them a little bit to put together that email, so that was fantastic. And this one is, like I said, one of the longer emails that we got over this, and this one wasn't necessarily for this show, but I asked if we could read this just because it's a really nice email here from Donald Milne. My name is Donald Milne, and I am listening to your podcast about Star Wars. A friend burned it onto a CD, and I'm listening to it during my hellish hour-and-a-half commute to North Hollywood to work in TV land. I have to say your podcast really hits close to home, and I can't describe in a simple email how much I relate to what you are saying, and it is refreshing to hear blunt opinions about George Lucas, seeing how I blame my life on that miserable bastard and his new hope. I was born in '68. And Star Wars hit me like a ton of bricks in late '77. I loathed Star Trek before that and didn't even like science fiction. And then this mystical other world got into my head and I was never the same. I began to daydream during 4th grade and would not pay attention in school and just drew stormtroopers all day and waited until someone would drive me 30 minutes to the Cine Capri in Phoenix, Arizona to watch Star Wars again. I saw it in the theater 18 times, and it gets much worse. Not able to shake my desire to make films, by the time I was a freshman in high school, I met a guy who had made a Star Wars sequel on 8mm film. Not Super 8, mind you. Well, I found my kindred spirit, and we set off to make the greatest Super 8 feature. We embarked on our film and built 30 sets, shot principal photography for a year, and built models for another year. We eventually shot 4 hours of footage, holy shit, on 3 little 3-minute film reels, and I edited it for the rest of my high school years. You see, it was basically like Star Wars with 1,000 shots and over 300 special effect shots. It was impossible to finish, so I had been working on it my whole life and only recently finished all the sound effects.
Man, I got to see this thing.
Yeah, this sounds like that Raiders film that those kids made. The reason why I'm telling you all this is, well, just listening to that podcast really brought back the whole Star Wars obsession for me, and you talking about on TV cracked me up since I would go nuts when the on TV monthly guide would arrive as a kid and look for all the R-rated films and see what salacious goodies I could discover, and what bizarre dark 70s movies there were. It was hard to describe to people the on-TV movie selections. Well, I'm halfway through the very entertaining podcast number 219, and I honestly feel it is more entertaining than the Star Wars prequels. And listening to the set decorator talk about making the sets is fascinating to me, especially that realism which I always loved about Star Wars. I realize now that there is so much behind-the-scenes footage on the internet on Star Wars, and I'm enjoying every bit of it in preparation for the much-awaited The Force Awakens. Like my friend who gave me your podcast said, it is the movie we should have gotten in the 80s. Yeah, it is sad that we had to wait so long. My wife will never understand what we have gone through and what George did to our childhood. So in closing, I thought I would mention how while I was listening to you talk, I felt this guy, yourself, is from my generation, and I wonder if people will get what he is saying as strongly as I do. You almost have to have lived that life of a Star Wars kid to really appreciate what you say on this podcast to the extent that I do. And when I heard that soundbite from John Dies at the end, it was like a grand slam to me, being that I am the editor of that movie. And whatever happened to my friend, the kid who I made the feature with in high school? Well, he was the other editor on Bubba Hotep along with myself. Thought I would share my thoughts with you, Donald Milne.
You know,
that is so nice.
That just, like, I want to cry, man, you know, because that's what I'm talking about. When we talk about film geeks, we talk about people that are into this stuff, and hearing people go, man, that really touched me. I can't believe, you know, what you guys did over there. And, you know, how cool, like when I heard that this guy made this insane Super 8 feature, I was just like, wow, this is incredible, you know, because we often talk about fan films on the show, you know, like the kids who completely reshot, what was it, Raiders, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice to hear that, you know, the crazy people who spend their entire youth doing things like that actually go on to make amazing stuff, like John Dies in the end, and, you know, work on Bubba Hotep and all of that stuff. That's incredible, man. And thank you so much for reaching out to us, and hopefully we'll get around to those films and then we can have them on.
Yeah, I've been really wanting to do a John Dies at the End podcast for a while. And even before I got this email from Donald, I had reached out to Don Coscarelli, and I know he's really busy with the next Phantasm film. Haven't gotten a response yet. I'm still kind of hoping for it, but, you know, that would be really nice. And I'm trying to find a way to contact David Wong, so maybe we can get him on the show. But yeah, that was so nice. And it's so nice to hear that these guys who were such huge film fans in high school ended up in the business. That is great.
You know, which is, to me, is just beautiful, because I have friends of mine, and I'm not going to name names, who are out in LA and they're trying to be actors. And I have one friend of mine specifically that the guy, when I quizzed him about 15 years ago about film, really didn't know a lot about film. And it was kind of sad for me. And I've talked to other producers, and sometimes, I mean, even when we're trying to like line up people for this show and we're talking to their agents and their reps and we're like, oh, he was in this movie. And it's like, he was? It's like, it's amazing how much the people who sometimes work in this business don't even know their own business. And I understand that sometimes you don't need to know everything in order to do what you do, but it's just beautiful when you hear people who have that kind of passion, who have that kind of love of it, and they're out doing the work every day. And hats off to Mr. Milne.
We got the question earlier about do we get much hate mail, but kind of going the opposite end of it. I mean, there's the fan letters like that. I would consider that a genuine fan letter, and that does everything that a fan letter should do. And that is just, totally, it doesn't make my day, it doesn't make my week, it makes my month and beyond. And it is just such a great thing. And it's great when we get praise that we're not even asking for. Like, it's really surprising to me. I will admit this. I Google us all the time because every once in a while I will see like a weird shift in our numbers, and it's like, okay, I don't exactly know where this is coming from. So I, have a little Google alert kind of thing, set up for a Projection Booth podcast, and within like 2 days, a couple months ago, we got really nice write-ups by Wow 24/7, which is a British site. I think it's wow247.co.uk, and also Mental Floss. I think, like I said, within 2 days, we got these nice write-ups, and they were kind of the lists of, podcasts that you should be listening to, and that was fantastic. And, just surprise, here you go. All this traffic started coming to the website from these things, and that was wonderful. And then, we've gotten a couple really nice write-ups in the AV Club, the Podmas thing that they do every Monday over on the AV Club, and that is terrific because we really don't fit in with that site that much. They really focus much more on comedy podcasts, but every once in a while, something that we're doing kind of breaks through, and they will give us, some props about a particular episode. So that was fantastic. And that's one of those sites where apparently you have to nominate people or like kind of bring things to their attentions, to the writers' attentions. So, if folks want to give us a shout out that way, get the flood of traffic in from Podmas, that would be fantastic. You can just go over there and there's a email address. I think it's just podmas@avclub.com, and people can just drop them a note, say, hey, check this episode out or whatever. So that's, as far as I know, what has been going on. Every once in a while we'll do like the Star Wars episode or the Alien 3 episode, some of the more deluxe kind of things, and people go out there and sing our praises, and it's fantastic. So thank you, everybody who is doing that kind of stuff for us. It really helps out. And, we joke around at the end of every episode about, giving us ratings on iTunes, and that's going to help us take over the world. It kind of is helping us. It really is. Between the iTunes ratings, between, these top 10 lists and, different articles and stuff, it's really helping us out. So the more we get this kind of clout and everything, the more cool little quotes I can put at the end of the email signature. So when I'm sending out an interview request, the more people are actually going to kind of take us seriously, which is really fantastic, because then we can start to get some of the, the bigger names and stuff. But I'm still amazed that here we are, two guys in Detroit, and we're managing to talk to what I consider to be some really amazing people. I mean, whether it be fucking, Bruce Stern, Nick Rogue, whoever, all the way down to, the second AD, everybody has been so nice, and all of these people have just been so generous with their time and so insightful. And I love hearing all of these different stories, no matter what it is, and especially a lot of the authors who are bringing different perspectives to us.
And I think it's the AV Club that gave me one of my favorite quotes when it comes to a review of the show, where they said it's pharmaceutical-grade film geekery. So I kind of love the idea that we're, the extra strength stuff over there. And the other thing that also blows my mind, and I think it may have been Mental Floss, or maybe it was Filmmaker Magazine, because we had that right up, I don't know, about 6-8 months ago, maybe even a year ago, is that when they put us on the list with other film shows, and this is just me, because, you as a listener, it probably doesn't factor in for you in this way, that we'll be on the list of 10 or 20 or whatever, and we're one of just maybe a handful that are truly independent shows. All the rest are divisions of, Empire Magazine or, some radio station or public radio station or television program or some newspaper or whatever. Like, they already have media professionals in that way. And it's not to say I'm not a media professional, because I am. I've been, that's the one thing that I think I bring, and the other thing that Mike brings in terms of his writing is that we both have this media background. Although basically I've made my living off it for the last 14 years, is that we're not hooked into we're not hooked into an outlet already. And when I look at those lists, that always makes me smile, because it says to me that folks who have the passion, who can do the work, and are working in their homes, out of their basements, wherever they're doing their show, can create something that's as good, if not even better, than what the guys who actually have a budget behind them are doing.
I completely agree. It is so weird to see us listed amongst these people where they do have a backing. And here we are, the little engine that could. We wouldn't be the engine that could if it wasn't for the people who were kind of backing us. So I want to say, we don't get very much hate mail, like we said. We get the occasional praise, the Donald Milne letter is one of a kind. But we get critiques every once in a while, and people are trying to help us out, make us better, which is nice. So people take the time to, look at the show and give us some critiques, and that's absolutely fine. So I did get one recently. This was through a Facebook message, and I have to say, Facebook messages on our Facebook group, or our Facebook page, I guess it is, because we have a group, we have a page, and it's bizarre that there are two different things when there really should be one, but whatever. We use one more for conversation, we use the other one for more announcements, so that's how we divvy them up right now. Anyway, I got this message through the Facebook Messenger, and yeah, they need to work the bugs out of this thing, because half the time I get these messages and it doesn't even show the name for some reason, so I have to refresh the page a few times and finally it'll show the name. So anyway, Jay Liam messaged us recently, and he was talking about our upcoming Deadly Prey episode, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we go on, and he was suggesting some that we ask some different folks. We had the one interview set up for that, and he was saying, I really want you to reach out to these other people. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to try, and that's one of the things that we talked about on the last Ego Fest, is that whenever you guys see a show that comes out and you see, like, they talk to the star of it, but they didn't talk to the director, they didn't talk to the writer, they didn't talk to this guy, that guy, the other guy. Trust me, we asked. We definitely have done as much as we possibly can to get as many people involved in a production to talk to us. That is one of the things that we really strive for. So like Rob, you mentioned Ghost Dog. Mm-hmm. Have we reached out to Jarmusch? Mm-hmm. Have we reached out to Forrest Whitaker? I mean, We've reached out to everybody involved in that production all the way down the line. Yeah. The only people we haven't reached out to are the people who are dead. That's it.
Yeah.
That's where we draw the line.
Yeah, I mean, I sent emails and follow-up emails and tweeted at people, and yeah. So when we do a show, it's not for lack of trying. It's not for laziness. There are just some people who, like I talked about earlier, we're done with it. We move on. We go on to the next thing. There's some people that don't want to talk about the past.
Right.
And there's some people who are fine talking about the past. It just depends. It really depends on that. And it also depends in a lot of ways, because you're dealing with gatekeepers. You're not dealing with the person directly. What the gatekeeper feels like. I mean, I was explaining this to someone earlier in reference to my book, because it took me 4 years to do the book. And there were some interviews that I didn't get in there until towards the end. And one thing that I've learned both from the show and the book is that basically agents and managers are very conservative. And the reason they're conservative is because it really does nothing to benefit them by not being conservative. And what I mean by that is that if they say yes to us and they don't know us from anybody else, and they're not going to spend the time to sit down and listen to the show, they're just going to go by the emails they get and whatever things that we send them, and their client comes on the show and their client has a horrible time on the show, then they're not going to be happy. Their client will not be happy, and therefore it could mean their job. Because in the world of agents and managers, you basically have a contract with that person and you work with them, and if they don't like you when the contract's up, then they go to someone else. And so their job is to make their client happy. That's their goal, which is a very conservative stance. I can't tell you how many times either people have been on this show or you have heard in other interviews or read in other interviews where people said, yeah, I heard that that script was offered to me, that film was offered to me, and I would have loved to have done that film, but I never saw it. My agent never gave it to me. Well, why did the agent not give it to him? Because the agent thought, there's no point in this for them. And we've had it where people have come on the show and go, man, like, I didn't know you guys did that film before with, that I was in. Yeah. Oh, I wish I would have known. I would have loved to have come on to talk to you about that. Well, we did. We tried to get you before, but you had this other agent and the other agent turned us down. Now you have a new agent and everything's okay. Like, you're willing to talk to us. So there's a certain level of conservative kind of gatekeeping that you have to deal with when you're dealing with agents and managers. And there have been some agents that have just been phenomenal, who know their clients. They know that their clients are hip to do certain things at certain times. With the example that you told me, Mike, and we already talked about a little bit with someone like Bruce Dern, who was like, their agent knew that was one of his favorite films he was in. So because we wanted to do Smile and he said, sure, then that's how we got him. So sometimes it's a matter of what film you want to ask about, too. Like, if you ask about a film that someone's got really bad memories of, it was very, like, traumatic, and they don't want to come on and say something bad about people who are still living. Because we've had that, too, where people come on and go, I really don't want to talk about that thing, or I don't want to talk about that person. Some people, it just depends. It really just depends. But like I said, there are a lot of gatekeepers that you have to go through. And it really doesn't behoove them to stick their necks out.
Well, here's one. So we did Solar Babies a few months ago, and when that episode was, we were getting ready to do it, I tried to contact, how many people are in that movie? Dozens, right? Yeah. Especially your
leads.
All the leads.
Probably about 10 of them.
Exactly. Jamie Gertz and Peter DeLuise and Jason Patrick. And I've talked to Jason Patrick's person, but have never gotten the okay. We really wanted him for After Dark My Sweet. And it was like, no, sorry, can't do it. It's like, okay, well, if we can't get him for After Dark My Sweet, how about for Solar Babies? Obviously no response on that one. So when we put out episodes, sometimes we'll say, we really wanted to talk to this person about this episode, but we were unable to do it. And we will kind of show our cards at that particular point, And Solar Babies comes out, and I do that, and I say, wow, we really wanted to have Sarah Douglas on this show, but unfortunately she wasn't able to do it. Sarah Douglas tweets back at me and says, who told you that I wasn't interested in talking about Solar Babies? And I was just like, this person who we contacted, this way and stuff, said, I love Solar Babies. I would have loved to have talked to you about Solar Babies. And I'm like having this Twitter conversation with Sarah Douglas, Ursa from Superman and Superman 2, one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite people. And I'm like, well, hey, we're covering the final program in a few weeks. Would you like to come on and talk about that? And she said, well, I was barely in that movie. It was my first movie, but I would still love to talk to you. And that's how we ended up getting an interview with Sarah Douglas. So things work out in the weirdest way sometimes. We tried the official channel, didn't try the unofficial channel with the Twitter, And that was the way that it worked out that time. But I thought I had tweeted at her. I swear that I thought that I had, because I know I tweeted at Peter DeLuise and at Jamie Gertz and just all of these different people, James LeGros. Nothing. So, yeah, we definitely are trying. So I do want to read this message from Jay Liam here. So this is slightly taken out of context, but it just kind of gives you the gist here. And this is just a little critique of the show, I suppose. If I was running your podcast, I'd be resilient in trying to acquire as many guests as possible, even if you only include several snippet interviews from each one. It's always a bummer to see 3 to 4 interviews for a movie that I have a mild interest in versus one interview for a movie that I really like. And I know you could reply with something like, quote, well, start your own podcast, unquote. But if you guys really endeavored for consistency, you would try to obtain more interviews for each show versus filling them with your riffing, or at least have a good balance between both. I know I'm probably striving for perfection in what I'm saying, but I hope you know they ultimately, when I hear you announce a show, I want to hear more interviews when it finally comes out to get a better grasp on the production. Monday morning quarterbacking is actually what you need when you try and put forth your theories and conjecture on why certain parts of the films happen for certain reasons, instead of getting that information from people who are actually there who can discuss them properly. This is especially pertinent when the films are circa 1970 to 1990. This is the perfect amount of time for the cast/crew members to openly spill the beans on what really happened on set, because enough time has passed since these productions take place that they don't have to hold back for fear of having to deal with industry repercussions because so much time has passed.
Yes and no. I also think that, like I said, there's some stuff that we've heard from time to time that was rather traumatic. So, for example, we had Mike Marvin on the show, and he first talked to us about Hamburger, and then he did The Wraith. And in The Wraith, there were people that were killed. And you can understand in the case of that where he might not want to even talk about that, or the way he said it. I was actually kind of amazed the way he said it, because he called out the producers by name and said it's their fault. That is the reason why this person died. And even though it's 30 years, that's heavy stuff.
Oh yeah,
and for him to say that. The other thing is like I said, we're dealing with these gatekeepers, and like I said, we do everything that we can to try and get as many people as we can, because that's what we want for ourselves and for you as well. A lot of agents and a lot of reps don't want to have their clients talk about a film from 40 to 30 to 20 years ago. They want you to talk to them about what they're doing now. And I think that there's sort of two reasons for this. One is the sort of perpetual youth aspect of what you're fighting against in Hollywood. And I have a friend of mine who's an actor who says, look, I'm getting older and it's getting harder to get parts, and I've got to keep going to the gym, and I got to, keep my hair a certain way, and all these things. And I think the other thing is that they don't make any money off the old stuff as much, as opposed to, I've got this new film coming out, won't you talk to me about that instead? So a lot of times when we get people on the show, it's because they have something to discuss. For example, I think if we would have tried to have done Sorcerer before, when we did Sorcerer, we probably wouldn't have gotten Friedkin, because Friedkin was pushing his book. And his reps were very much like, you want to talk to Mr. Friedkin? We'll talk to you about it. He's got this book. And that worked out well because it helped to push his book. And he wanted to talk about Sorcerer, which luckily was the film that he was actually restoring, and they were doing this big thing around. So all of that kind of worked out. I think if we would have pulled up Sorcerer a year before, they would have been like, sorry, Mr. Friedkin's busy doing something, which would have been him writing the book. So, a lot of it is timing. It really is timing. And being able to work with an agent or a person to go, I'll give you the time to talk about your new stuff if you're willing to talk about something you did 25 years ago.
Well, and I think that's a challenge that we have with every episode, is getting the people who are directly involved, or getting somebody who is an expert on the subject, or a mix of both. Or sometimes even getting somebody who is kind of tangentially related. Like our interview for The Holy Mountain was with someone who is an expert in tarot, and tarot plays such a big part of the Holy Mountain that it really fit together well. And there are other interviews that we have where it just makes sense, like all the adult babies that we spoke to on the baby episode, where it was the baby, Bad Boy Bubby, and what was the one with Mickey Rooney, The Milky Life. So it fit there, I thought, anyway, and I thought that it made a really compelling show. Did we talk to Mickey Rooney? No, he's dead. Did we talk to William Hookins? No, he's dead. Did we talk to the director of it? No. So it's tough sometimes to get these folks, so we're always looking for that angle, that edge, trying to get the interview with the person that makes the most sense, or getting a co-host where there is a natural affinity, or sometimes just people want to talk about stuff. It was great having, all the times we've had Keith Gordon or Craig Bierko or Vincenzo Natali on the show to talk about stuff because they just like these movies. Hey, great. And whether it's, Mike Malloy, Heather Drain, El Goro, whoever it is talking about stuff, it is always such a pleasure to have that other point of view, because I'm sure if it was just the Mike and Rob show every week, we might get a little old.
Yeah, I think if you had to listen to both of us all the time, and that's the thing, is I love having our guest co-hosts because they add so much more to it. And at the end of the day, I don't need to hear my own voice. I really I'm not in love with my voice. I am more interested in having good conversation with other people and hearing what they have to say. And this even goes back to my radio work, where it's like, if I can pull my voice out of the piece that I produce and have them tell the story, great.
Oh, yeah. Something like a Rock and Roll High School, where it was just a montage for almost the whole thing of other people talking.
Right.
So much of this job, experience, thing, hobby, whatever you want to call it, podcast, has just been this whole thing of making connections with people. And I don't mean connections like, hey, Bubby, let's do lunch. I mean actual human connections. And I think that has been the most gratifying thing. Like, we have people who, I'm friends with them on Facebook now, who I never would have met had it not been for the podcast. And there are an amazing group of folks that are coming from wide varieties of background. The only thing that we have in common is a love of movies, but it is so gratifying, and just making those human connections, be it with our guests or with our guest co-hosts, with the people that help put us in touch with people, it's just been a terrific experience. So the reason why I included the Jay Liam thing was just because of that whole idea of, hey, you guys should really try harder to get more people on the show. I swear to God, Jay, we really try every week, week in, week out. That's one of the reasons why we plan stuff out so far ahead, is because we've got scheduling conflicts. We've got, people that just aren't interested now, but maybe they'll be interested later. And then it's the whole thing of trying to track some of these people down. Usually we don't announce an episode unless we can get a interview, and we always have the kernel there of who can we get, or in some cases, we don't have anybody, but we think that we can get at least one person. And that's our goal, is to get at least one person. But really, the ultimate goal is to get as many of those voices as we can. So we really do try. So please cut us some slack and know that we are trying our best.
And if that doesn't work for you, take your own advice. Start your own damn podcast. No. It's one of those things where also I have to say that it may even get harder with time if the reviews and the attention and the numbers and all of those things don't continue to go up, because it's basically become this easy. It's become this easy that, two guys with a Skype connection and a way to record, you got a show. And as the number of shows continue to, just continue to build, because it is so cheap to do and so easy to do, you have to realize that there isn't just the projection booth, that there's 50, 60 other film shows that are as good, if not better, at what you do. And they're also contacting those people, you know.
Exactly.
And they only have so many hours in the day. And when we ask someone for 20 minutes, half hour, an hour, they're not getting paid to do that. So if them and their agent are, you know, very much about trying to maximize every living second that they have, you know, unless they're going to have a good time with us, but they don't know they're going to have a good time with us until they say yes, there might not be a reason for them to say yes. So it gets harder. It does. It's going to get harder as more and more people get into our racket.
All right, let's read another email here.
It's from JP Ward. It says, I worked at Hollywood Video when The Sixth Sense was released on VHS. The price of renting a new release after tax was $4.06. Why this useless bit of trivia is lodged in my memory? Well, because nearly every customer who paid cash would sort through their change for 6 pennies and hand them over with a jokey proclamation like, here's the 6 cents. Aha, 6 cents, 6 cents. So I heard this countless times. Repetition forced itself unwantedly into my memory. My question to you both is, what is the most random, trivial, useless film-related memories that you have of your days working in a video store or in a cinema? I mean, I know how to build and tear down a print. I know how to fix a brain wrap. If you ever worked on an old projector, you know what that is. I've got great stories of dealing with the public in a theater, either under high pressure, such as when we had the Blair Witch exclusive and it went to all 3 screens and then added extra shows in the morning and at midnight, Monday through Friday. I have, memories of a bomb threat that someone called into the theater because we were doing a fundraising event for the local gay rights group. I have a memory of a guy who, although I didn't work with him or wait on him, the guys who I did the film with when I did Tainted, they worked at a Suncoast Video at the Macomb Mall, which
oh God,
which yeah, that's long gone out of business. But they worked at Suncoast Video, and this guy would come in and he would just buy movies that featured people getting tied up. Now, not necessarily bondage, but the guy just had this affinity for movies featuring people tied up. And it was, he would just buy these movies over and over again, such as he probably bought, within a year or two, he probably bought like 10 copies of Reservoir Dogs. We have no idea specifically what this was about, but we got a slight idea. So, I mean, there's some weirdness, you know, when you work with the public and we're in retail.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to beg off of this one, but I will definitely say that go back and listen to, we did 2 specials on VHS, and I think we both talked about our days in a video store quite a bit during that particular time. So there's some weird stuff in there as far as like remembering videotapes when they would come out in a different type of box or a different presentation. You know, I still think about Last of the Mohicans coming out widescreen and customers flipping out when that would happen. I still always think about renting movies on a Sunday and then telling people you have that until Tuesday, and then I would start singing Voices Carry every time I did that. I thought it was hilarious, but not too many other customers did.
They didn't get the reference.
They didn't get the reference. So, yeah. But, yeah, there's a lot of useless stuff, and I think some of the things that have come out on the show, too, are talking about end credits music and just how important some of that was. And I will say that there are songs that I still can't get unstuck from my head, such as the Martians Are Taking Over the World song from the Spaced Invaders final credits.
There were 2 songs that really hit me both in opposite directions, one of which we did on the Limey episode, because when I worked at the Main, the Limey played there, and I just remember going in right before the end to open the doors, and that scene where there's the piece from Poor Cow where, you know, the Wilson character is playing guitar and singing Colors by Donovan, and just the sense of loss, just the crushing sense of loss with that, which still kind of chokes me up a little bit when I watch The Limey even at home. And I just remember hearing that and seeing that piece just like over and over and over again for weeks when I was doing the theater, working the theater. And then the other was, I think that, and people are going to be like, man, you're like really out of it. I can't believe that you didn't know about these guys before then, was when we had High Fidelity. And in the credits to High Fidelity is Love's Little Red Book. And just hearing that over and over again as I clean the theater. And I just remember just like this soaking into me. And it's like whenever I hear that song now, all I see are credits rolling. That's like, it's just stuck in my head in that way.
I can totally see that. If you got a good song while you're cleaning a theater, it definitely helps out.
It's the best, yeah.
There was a horrible song at the end of a Dan Aykroyd movie, and I can't remember if it was Couch Trip or Loose Cannons, but I'm going to have to dig it up and see if I can throw it into this episode because it was just so obnoxious, but we used to sing it all the time. All right, let's go ahead. We had 2 voicemails come in. One of them we're going to play at the very end of the show because it's quick, it's full of praise, and there's not a question attached to it. So we're not just going to sit there and say, oh, we are wonderful, thank you.
We want to end on an up note.
Exactly, like George Costanza.
That's right.
So this one is a voicemail from Maurice. Some people call him the Space Cowboy, and we're going to play that right now.
Ego inside a dirty world. Ego inside a dirty world.
Hello, Mike and Rob. This is Morris sending a message from across the waters for Ego Fest Part 3 of the projection booth. Thanks very much for this opportunity to send some feedback in. Now, I've got to confess, I don't really have a question as such as to how you do the magic in the projection booth. Just sufficient for me to say that I enjoy listening to the program and the work that you guys put in. So I hope that that's stroking the ego sufficiently. The only thing I'd possibly do is maybe something of a request, and that would be if you maybe wanted to do, say, like a month investigation into some great Australian films. I'd certainly be happy to come up with some suggestions if they're ones that you wanted to familiarise yourself with and just see your thoughts on those. Australian cinema in recent years, unfortunately, is not appreciated as much at home as it should be, I think. There have been some great genre films which I know have made an impression on some folks in America, so I'm not quite sure why they don't do the same as well at home. But nevertheless, I think there's been some great films over the last few years. But if you chose to do a month of films or even just a one-off, whatever, there's some great stuff from Australia's purple patch of the 70s, or really anything over recent years. A lot of really good stuff to choose from besides the obvious big ones that might have made it sort of across the pond in your neck of the woods. Some more obscure titles, but anyway, that's enough of me rambling. Just sufficient for me to say once again that I'm really digging the show, and I hope that you guys carry on for a long time. All the best. Cheers.
So I think we have some good news for Maurice, is that we are going to be covering a few Australian films over the next few months. We have actually done some Australian films already, but we've got a couple really good ones coming up here. Actually, at the end of September, we're going to be doing Ralph de Hare's 10 Canoes. And we talked about Ralph de Hare when we did the Baby, Baby, Baby episode. He was the director of Bad Boy Bubby. And we talked to cinematographer Ian Jones about that particular film and a few other films. And Ian Jones talked to us about a lot of stuff. And so I ended up cutting part of that interview and saving it for a 10 Canoes episode. And in the meantime, because we do leave such lead times between episodes, we managed to get Ralph de Hare. So I'm really excited to be able to play an interview with Ralph de Hare, director of 10 Canoes, director of Bad Boy Bubby, director of so many awesome things. This guy is one of my favorite directors just because you never know what you're going to get from him. He directs so many different things. And, I mean, 10 Canoes is not like anything that you've seen in a long time, if ever. So I'm really excited for that. And our special guest co-host on that one is Miguel Rodriguez. And we had a great time last time Miguel was on the show, so I'm really excited for that. That's actually going to be his break, Rob. He's doing a film festival coming up over the next few weeks here, and it's going to be his break afterwards to sit and talk to us about 10 Canoes.
Oh, you poor, poor man. I'm sorry that you're taking your vacation to sit with us. But hey, glad to have you. Australian film is cool. We've done some New Zealand film, obviously, with The Quiet Earth. And we had a discussion around that, sort of looking at New Zealand film versus Aussie film, and what does that all mean, and what sort of commonalities and the things are they working out and not working out and things like that. And I'm going to plead ignorance here. I know that we do have some great friends, one of which who I talked about earlier with Wang Wang, Andrew Lee Vold, who the guy knows more about Filipino film than I think anybody on the planet who isn't Filipino and grew up in the Filipino industry. But he would also, I think, maybe be a great resource for us when it comes to pulling up Australian film. The part of it for us has always been, and this was something I used to get on you and the old regime about in the first year before I was on the show, because I was listening to the show, and sometimes I get really kind of uptight about the fact that you're reviewing films that I can't see. And I remember sending you guys a message or remarking somewhere going, yeah, I'm really excited that you saw that movie, but I can't see it. And I'm really excited that you had a great conversation about it, but I feel kind of left out. And there's part of me that really wants to try to bring across a show that is available, and plus this goes into the planning, out 6 months or however long we do it, that you can have a chance to see these things if you follow us, if you have the app or you follow all the events that we have on Facebook. It really give you a sense of what we're doing and when we're doing it, so that way you can study up, so that when you see the film and then you listen to the show, it's a nice little companion. Because, I know for me, I get something out of shows for films that I haven't seen, but I think you get more out of it when you've seen it. And that's really been one of my guiding principles on being on the show, is to try and make sure that we're doing shows where the film is at least somewhat readily available. And I know there's been a couple that are you can't really find, they're really hard to find.
Another movie that was hard to find for a lot of years, that was considered a somewhat lost film, a film maudit, as it were, was one called Wake and Fright, which is also known as Outback. And that was directed by our friend Ted Kotcheff, who we talked to on our First Blood episode. This was one of Ted's earlier films. He directed this thing in 1970, I believe, came out in 71. And that is another Australian film, though it's directed by a Canadian and stars two British people, but it is considered a hallmark of Australian cinema, and we're going to be talking about that one in May. That is May 18th currently, subject to change, but we're going to be talking to Ted Kotcheff about that, to his editor, Anthony Buckley, who has subsequently become a producer and is kind of one of the most lauded producers in Australian cinema. Also to Tina Kaufman, who is one of the authors of a series of books about Outback cinema, and she literally wrote the book on Wake and Fright. That's who we've got so far. And since this show isn't until May of 2016, we've got some time to track down some other folks. So we are going to be beating the bushes, as it were, to try to find other people to talk to about that film. But I think that the people that we have so far, pretty darn good. The interview with Kotcheff was spectacular, and I'm really excited to share that. I know that he's got certain stories that he tells, and you'll hear that sometimes with some of our interviews where there are, like the rote stories, because once you get to a certain point in your life, you're not digging deep. You're just telling the same stories. But I think that I managed to surprise him with a couple questions, so you might hear some stuff about Wake and Fright that you haven't heard before. So, Rob, go ahead.
Ted Kotcheff is great. I mean, First Blood, it was just a great honor to have him on. And Toronto guy, so originally, and, told some great stories about coming down to Detroit for baseball and burlesque. So, so I think we actually sent him, because there was a guy who was doing posters in town here in Detroit who was taking these old burlesque ads out of the newspaper and turning them into posters. And I think we sent one to him as a thank you.
Yeah. I should have asked him if he got that, because I didn't remember to do that.
Oh.
The one question I didn't ask, my God.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the episodes you're excited about coming up here?
Well, I mean, for me, I already kind of talked about a couple of them. The fact that we have the sort of foreign noir that's coming up. That's going to be fun, with a look at Ghost Dog and Alphaville and Elevator to the Gallows and things like that. So all of that's coming up. I think the one that's going to be a lot of fun for me, because it's such a huge kind of like part of my vocabulary at times, is the last show of this year, which is Apocalypse Now. I don't know what else we can say about Apocalypse Now that hasn't already been said, and I sort of felt that way when we did Blade Runner years ago, because I felt like, it's Blade Runner. I mean, like, what more can we say? But I'm sure we'll find something. And then the other one I'm excited about is Pump Up the Volume in February of next year, because the call that I had with Alan Moyle was amazing. Just a really fucking nice guy. I may take him up on his offer to call him back and talk to him even more. And he gave me some numbers and email addresses for his producer on that, and said, call this guy, tell him you talked to me, and I hope you can get him, because he can give you even more stuff. So it's things like that. Sometimes if you hit someone on the right day and you have a great conversation, they give you phone numbers and emails for other people, and that leads to, even greater stuff.
I am so excited coming up here. We're going to be talking about the final program in just a couple weeks here. Our friend Eric Cohen from the Cinephiles is coming back to join us. And I mentioned the Sarah Douglas interview, but for me, I am so excited to be able to play the interview that we did with Michael Moorcock, who is one of my favorite authors growing up. Like, when I was in high school, reading all the Elric and Coram books and all this, Behold the Man, as much as I could possibly get my hands on of this particular author, and to be able to sit down and have a conversation with this guy, I was like a frickin' schoolgirl. I was so giddy. I couldn't believe that I was able to finally talk to this guy. So I am so thankful for having this show as an outlet where I can have an excuse to talk to somebody whose books I've read since I was just a teeny bopper. So that I'm really excited about. I'm also excited about the Apocalypse Now episode, though I am nervous, because this is one of the few episodes where we put that on the calendar, and right now, as of this recording, we have no one scheduled to be a special guest, though I'm trying like hell to get some folks on here. I've been bouncing emails back and forth with some folks over at Coppola Films, over at American Zoetrope. So far, not getting the right response, but still trying. At least I'm getting the yes, it's okay to ask again in a few months kind of response, as opposed to the, they're really busy right now, and then write back and say, can I write back in a few months? Is that going to be all right? Yeah, no, we're not interested at all, period, end of story. Which happens sometimes, but with Coppola, no, his person was like, no, go ahead. You can email back in a few months, and we'll see if Francis is available. So that would be great. That would be a dream interview for me.
That would be great, because, and sometimes I pull up this card, and there is a certain amount of pride, and it's coming up actually this week's show. If you're listening to this, Blue Collar, Paul Schrader, another Michigan guy. I like to pull up the Michigan card sometimes, and, Francis Ford Coppola, born in Detroit. Hung out here for a little while with his dad when he was in the DSO before he took off.
Let's see. We've got some other great folks coming up here. We've got The Entity. We're going to be joined again by Daniel Kremer, who was on our Hit episode, and he is writing a biography of Sidney J. Furie. And Mr. Furie has agreed to come back on the show and talk to us about The Entity. We're trying for a few other folks from The Entity. So far, no bites. And really, this is something that I never thought I would really have to deal with for some reason when it came to the show, is loss. You know, we will do, like, if there are people who are important to us or important to the community, those kind of things, we definitely on our Facebook group will do a shout out, you know, RIP, whoever. But the one that really hit me the hardest recently was the loss of Alex Rocco. And we talked to we talked to Rocco on our Detroit 9000 episode. Such a great guy. I could not believe how awesome he was.
Just one of the sweetest guys ever. And I mean, like, I just remember as a kid him on TV in various roles and TV shows, and then as I got into the films. And I mean, most people remember him, you know, as Mo Green on The Godfather. And I was listening to WTF. I was catching up on some of the Maron podcasts, and when Rocco died, he did a thing because he said that Mark Maron said that in this past season that he had him on the show as his agent, and he believes that may actually be the last thing he did in film and TV, and he was talking about how he was just a great guy with him too. And I mean, it's just a real sweetheart of a guy, and it's sad, you know. It's sad when people pass, and we've had a couple recently who have been on the show, and it's you know, we're grateful to have them in our archive, in our library, and we honor them for taking the time, and we thank them for their great work.
Yeah, and with Rocco, we were talking with his agent. It looked like it might happen to have him back on the show, and I was so excited to be able to talk to him again. And then it just, you know, the news came out that he had passed, and it's like, okay, so, you know, did the right thing, emailed his agent, who was super sweet with us every time that I talked to her. So just, you know, I couldn't express my condolences enough as far as losing him, and I know that he was a real friend to her. So yeah, that was tough. That was really tough. And like I said, that's something that I never really expected when it came to this show. But then it's this weird feeling, man, when you interview somebody and you make that, like, I'm not saying that I'm buddy with everybody that we interview. There are some people where I do feel comfortable enough to, you know, kind of, you know, consider them to be friends or at least acquaintances, those kind of things. But you always have that little spark, that little moment where you are connecting with somebody. Like I was saying before, the connections with people, and you connect with them very briefly. And you're taking some time from them. They're giving their time to you. It's this nice connection. And then when they shuffle off this mortal coil, it really just hits you in a weird way. I'm sure that you've had that because you've been in this business a lot longer than I have, where you've experienced that loss of knowing that you've talked with someone and then knowing that they're not there anymore.
Yeah, I've had that in several ways. I've had it both in terms of people I've interviewed. I've had it in terms of people I've worked with. And even with the book, you know, I've got the book coming out, and there's two people in the book who out of those 4 years are both gone now. And there's one guy who I didn't get a chance to interview, but his photos are in the book. So there's three people connected to the book. And it's sad because they took their time with you and all of that. But the one thing that I feel honored by is that they took the time to talk to me and to share those stories. And in the case of the people that I talked to, maybe they didn't share those stories before, you know, right? Because maybe nobody asked them to share them in that way. And since I have them and they are on tape and they are part of my archive, they eventually, at some point, will probably end up in a larger archive of material related to this project that I did. So I'm
I'm hoping that in some way their legacy, their ideas, the things that matter to them can kind of carry on in some way. And like I said, to me, it's a very sacred thing, because when someone takes the time to listen to your show, when someone takes the time to interview with you, they're giving up the one commodity they can't get more of. Like, we can go get more money, we can, that's fine. Like, if that's your goal, to make money, we can get you money. But, the one thing you're never going to get more of is time. And that, to me, is a very sacred thing. And I feel honored by everyone who's taken the time with us to either listen or to interview. It's a very special thing.
The one that really hit me in a weird way was just a few weeks ago here, where I was almost interviewing David Pryor. We have an episode set up for early next year. I think it's February. And I'm still not sure if we're going to do this episode or not, because I was just so floored by what happened. I emailed David. We're supposed to have an interview on a Thursday. Emailed with him, and he said, stuff came up. Can we do this again next week? Can we try again? Sure, no problem. What works for you? Monday, 8:30 a.m. Sure, no problem. I'll come into work early, record this interview, start my work day. No big deal. So Sunday rolls around, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have this happen again where I forget to email him a day early. I'm going to email him on Sunday. Never got a response, but that's okay. Just confirming the time and everything, and asking him for his phone number, because that was the one thing I didn't have, because it's like, okay, I'm going to call you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. What's the best number to reach you at? And he didn't email me back. So that Monday rolls around, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm just about to leave for work. I email him again, and I'm like, hey, I'm leaving for work right now. What number should I call you at 8:30? Never heard from him. So I'm like, okay, 9 o'clock rolls around, send him another email, and I go, hey, sorry it didn't work out. Let's try this again. It was a crazy week at work, and I was like, I'm not really available until Friday at 8:30. Why don't we try then? And I think within 2 hours, the news broke on Facebook that he had passed away. So sometime between Thursday and Monday, he was gone, and that just floored me. I don't know why I took it so hard, but it was just so weird to, be basically emailing a dead person, which was just really strange for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I had a situation in my own personal life recently with my mother and her longtime boyfriend. And I told you this after you told me the story, where she got up in the morning. He was laying in bed. Everything was cool. She went in the kitchen, came back to the bedroom about 20 minutes later, and he died. Just that, bam. He wasn't feeling too well a few days before, but, just thought it was a cold or something.
Right.
And, it's like 1 minute you're there, the next minute you're not there. And, I don't want to get too philosophical on this stuff, but, when I was a kid, I had a decent amount of loss around me. I had, a good friend of mine died when he was 16. I took care of my grandmother when I was 19 until she passed away about 6 months later. So I really came at an early age to really, kind of be grateful for those around me and understand that this is not going to last forever. And to, say what you got to say and be there and to try to make the place a little better. And, hopefully when it's all over and the lights go out, that, people are like, hey, decent guy, we had a lot of good times. It was cool, and, that's what I hope for myself. So it's tough, man. I know.
We talked a little bit about it on our Alien 3 episode. I was so glad that I talked to John Fasano about Alien 3, and so we had that banked for that episode. Other folks that have passed that we're aware of, we might not even be aware of everybody, but Gary Bradner, talked with him for the Howling episode. I definitely recommend people check that out. And then a special episode that we did, which was sometimes our specials don't kind of get lost in the shuffle. So if you haven't heard the interview with Vincent Bugliosi, definitely check that out. He was part of a really interesting documentary about George Bush, George W. Bush, I should say, and some of the criminal activities that took place, putting us into a unjustified war and stuff. So great interview with him, and that was another one where I really felt like we made kind of a little connection there. Was able to joke around with Vincent Bugliosi, which was a nice feeling. You expect him to be super serious or whatever, and to be able to make him crack up, I was really happy about.
Yeah, especially the guy who, put Manson on trial and wrote Helter Skelter. I really don't think that he would be around to, have a few laughs. But, it was good.
So I just really want to hit, before we go, we are over on Facebook. We're pretty much over there every day. If you go to facebook.com/The Projection Booth, there's an area right there called Events. You can click on that and see all of the episodes we have coming up over the next few months. At the moment, I think we are scheduled out until June of 2016, and you will see some of the good stuff that we have coming up for you. And I'm really excited about some of these episodes. I mean, just the Contact episode, talking to William Fichtner and James Hart, the screenwriter, talking to Jennifer Lynch for the Boxing Helena episode, Michael Murphy for the Phase 4 episode, Eric Bradner for Colossus the Forbin Project. We've got some amazing people coming up for our Last Dragon episode. Talk to Mike Starr about that, to the producer, to the writer, to another couple actors in that one, and we've got hopefully some more on the way. Really trying right now to get a few more people for our Showgirls episode, and hoping maybe we can kind of play that Michigan card that you were talking about. Not sure if that's going to happen, but you never know. And again, the Michigan connection with Hudson Hawk, trying that one too. So far, no bites whatsoever, but we can hope. And then got an amazing interview with Garrett Graham for our Demon Seed episode that I can't wait to share. So that's going to be good too. And you already mentioned Pump Up the Volume. That will be epic. The interview with the director of The Changeling. We should have a great discussion about Night of the Comet. Should have Catherine Mary Stewart back and have Kelly Maroney on that one, and we're trying for some other folks as well. We're scheduled to talk to some pretty good people for The Secretary. Those haven't happened yet, so I don't want to drop any names on that one. Talking to frickin' Nick Rogue about Bad Timing, Essential Obsession. Talked to him, I talked to his editor, and I talked to the actual writer of that one, Yale Udoff, who has done some terrific work. So, yeah, some great stuff coming up. I really can't emphasize enough how excited I am by some of these things. So hopefully that is able to translate to the listeners as well when we have some of these shows that, they might not reach epic lengths. They might not all be a 7-hour Conan kind of thing or a 4-hour Star Wars kind of thing. But I think that even in an hour show or an hour and a half, you're going to reach, hopefully our excitement for some of these subjects is going to come through to you. We had the question earlier about theme months. And one of the things that I've been thinking about, and this is completely off the cuff, so just whatever your reaction is to this one, Rob. Our friends over at Outside the Cinema were taking requests, but they were taking them along with payments, basically. It was pay for play, really. It was a payola scandal, as it were. But, you give us money, and you tell us what film to cover, and then if you want to come on, you can come on, that kind of stuff. So what would you think if we did something similar, but at least just took some suggestions and maybe did a suggestion month?
Well, I definitely like the suggestion ideas. The, and then I think along with the suggestion would be if maybe we can get, voicemails. Why that suggestion, and then we can put that in the show, or find a way to kind of work that in. Kind of talking about the PayPal thing. The one thing that you were talking about earlier. Oh, I feel weird asking for money. Is that there are other shows, and I have a lot of friends and a lot of respect for all the various ways that people do their shows. We have never done a crowdfunding campaign. We've never done a sustaining gift program or anything like that. So when we ask you to PayPal every now and then, it's just out of the kindness of your heart. And and I've been a subscriber to other people's shows where I've given them a couple of bucks a month and things like that. But we've always been really quiet on that, because we would rather have it be something that you want to do because you want to do it, as opposed to feeling like, well, if I don't do it, then it's going to go away. And I never wanted to play in that realm. I mean, I worked in 7 years in public radio, and that was the one thing that we tried not to do, was tell people, hey, we're gonna go away if you don't give us the money, or Garrison Keillor's going to retire if you don't give him the money. Well, he's actually retiring. But anyway, you know what I mean? Just that's never been in our cards here at the projection booth.
We are shutting the doors unless we get $50 by next Thursday.
No blackmail. So it's all about just free love, donation, and pass the plate if you want to, or we'll pass the film can, and if you want to put a couple bucks in the film can, thank you very much.
So yeah, we do take suggestions, and the one thing I have been asking people to do is don't email me your suggestions. Don't post them on the Facebook group. Don't send me a message via Facebook. It's just going to get lost. So what we did, created a little spot over at projection-booth.com. Along that tab of links across the top, we've got links for our past shows where you can go in and see everything that we've done, which is usually pretty up to date. Count on maybe the last 6 weeks or so not being there, but it's pretty good. You're going to see the first 4 years guaranteed of stuff up there. So you got that, and you can enjoy those for hours and hours. You got the About Us, the reviews, a section called Books, which we'll talk about more again in a minute here. Contact us. Store. You can go into our little store. We've got the whole Amazon thing set up, so you can, if you buy crap from Amazon, we get a kickback. I don't know if I've ever seen a dime from that, but it's a nice idea anyway. And then the last tab right now is suggestions. So you can go in there, give us your name, give us your email address, so we can contact you if we take your suggestion, and let you know, and give us a reason why you want us to cover that, and give us the IMDb link, because there are too many movies that have the same title, or just that I don't necessarily recognize. Like somebody the other day was like, hey, you guys should do Real Men. And I'm like, Real Men? The Hal Hartley film? And it's like, no, you idiot. That's Simple Men. Real Men is this one with James Belushi and John Ritter. And I'm like, oh, okay. If I had the link, it would have made it a little bit easier. So, but yeah, go in there, put your stuff in there, and, I think next year at some point we'll do a month that's full of suggestions. We've done suggested shows on the show before. Sometimes they work out well. Sometimes they don't necessarily work out well. But
yeah, and sometimes we can't remember who the hell suggested it. I remember
exactly.
This is a suggested show. I'm sorry, whoever suggested this, because we can't remember who suggested this.
Exactly. In our myriad of spreadsheets that we keep, one of the things that isn't there is, and where did this idea come from? So when it comes to some of these, it's like, yeah. But we're getting some good suggestions out there. Just real quick, I opened it up, and I'm seeing stuff like Never Ending Story.
Simpson, this is the most blatant case of fraudulent advertising since my suit against the film The Never Ending Story.
Man, you think that Conan show was long? Whoa! It's a never-ending story. It just goes on forever.
Dick Tracy, which has actually been on our list of things that we want to do for a long time. Brazil is on there, and I know you like Brazil.
Yeah.
But again, that's another one of those what can you say that hasn't been said kind of thing.
That is a challenge episode. That's, like I said, that's like Blade Runner. That's like Apocalypse Now. You only want to do one of those like every year or 2 years. You don't want to load up on those.
The Parallax View, which is one of my favorite movies, which is terrific. The Long Goodbye, which has actually been suggested a few times. There you go. Pump Up the Volume is one of those on there. And I think your boy Ken Bates is going to be our last voicemail here when we sign out. So,
whoop.
Yeah. Oh, and hey, I didn't even realize this. 30th anniversary of The Last Dragon. There you go. Fulfilled.
If I believe it correctly, I think that's the last Motown film, isn't it, too?
I think it is. But yeah, we've got a huge show lined up for The Last Dragon. First show of the year, 2016. You're going to be hearing from Timac, from Mike Starr. Just, it's going to be amazing.
Barry Gordy's still around.
If I could get Barry Gordy on the phone, or I'll even go down to the Motown Museum and try to talk to that guy.
I'm going to wait here and go get Mr. Gordy and bring him down here.
If I could get Vanity, now that would be something. Yeah, she gave her life to Christ.
Well, we're just asking for an hour to talk on the phone. I mean, come on.
We actually pay attention to some of this stuff, so go on over to projection-booth.com, check out that last tab, leave us your suggestions, your name, your email address, the title, the link to the IMDb, and why we should cover it. And if it's not out on the IMDb, it's probably too rare for us to cover. So I'm just putting that out there as well. You got to at least have something where we can actually, let people see it. There are only so many Dead Ringer and Day the Clown Cried episodes that we can do. Rob, not only can people hear you here on the projection booth every week, week in, week out.
Oh, you poor people.
But people who are gluttons for punishment can hear your voice a little bit more.
Yeah, and this one's a little bit more local. The Detroit Free Press, which is one of the two major dailies here in Detroit, upon my return came to me and said, hey, you know a lot of people, and you know this whole podcast and radio deal. How would you feel about doing a arts, entertainment, culture podcast every week? And I said, how much does the job pay? And they said, more than working at the projection booth. So I said, sure, sign me up. So for the past, at this point, when you listen to this, it will be 6 weeks. You can get it on iTunes. It's called Detours. And no offense to Mike, I did not rip off the title of his book, Cinema Detours, for this. I just thought Detours sounds like a pretty good name considering we're a car town. And there's plenty of construction around here lately, too. So it's a show I do every week. I interview usually 3 or 4 different people, tell their different stories related to usually things that are on the calendar for that week, give you some suggestions for the weekend, and also share a little bit of Detroit art and culture history, because there is a lot of that we can share as well. So it's called Detours from the Detroit Free Press. You can get it at freep.com or on iTunes. Just type in Detours.
Do you have an app?
No. Sadly, not yet.
We have an app.
Oh yeah. Those are pretty tasty, because you can get them. They usually come before the meal, and usually consist of some sort of salty or fried little thing there. I like the fried mushrooms personally, but oh no, wrong app. Sorry.
We have an app available for your iPhone. I know you're kind of an Apple guy. I'm more of an Android guy, and there's an app available for that. There wasn't for a little bit. Apparently the app went down. Google started charging different rates and all this kind of crap, so our app developer wasn't able to support it, but gave him a couple more bucks. See how important that donation to the projection booth is? Gave him a couple more bucks, and he was able to put it back up in the Google Play Store. So now you can download that app for your iPhone, your Android. I think there's even a Kindle Fire version of it. So if you've got a Kindle Fire and you want to listen to the projection booth, you want to have all the power of the projection booth at your hands, you can see the blog posts that we're doing, our Facebook posts, our Twitter posts, our events, and by events we mean our upcoming episodes. So you can go in there right now. I just clicked on the app on events, and I see Ego Fest listed here as coming out in a couple days. And I got Blue Collar and the final program. I got the whole thing. I can even see past events to see old shows. So you can keep up with us that way. You can listen to things through the podcast app. It is amazing. So, and it's free. That's the thing too. Is that we pay the app developer, he develops the app, he puts it out in the App Store, does all this kind of stuff, and we don't pass on the expense to you. You can download it for free, recommend it to your friends. Are you going on a long road trip? Are you going up to Toronto in a couple days? Hey, bam, 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 there's your app. You got it, you're good. Go.
So do that, and then once you get the app, I don't know, if you usually buy an app and it costs you $1, hey, maybe throw us $1, maybe throw us $2, whatever. It's all there, you know. So it was just our way of making sure we could connect with you and get you everything that you need with this show, because that's how we like it. So why not share the love that way?
You can give us $2.20 every month out of your paycheck. So Rob, hit him again with the book. Where can people get the book?
Well, they can get the book several different places. You can go to orbitbookdetroit.com. You can go to facebook.com/orbitbookdetroit, Twitter, Orbit Book, Wayne State University Press, and you should be able to find it there. And then also Amazon. And I'm sure that if you go back through the projection booth over the last several weeks, I've been posting about it, and you can learn more there. So, and I hope that if you're in the Detroit area and you're a listener and you have an interest, that maybe you come out to one of the book events. So in September and then into October, and I'm heading out to LA hopefully in November, and I'll let you know exactly when that is as soon as I know. And if you're out in LA and I make it out to LA, coming out and visit, it'll be great.
You know, Rob, LA's fine. The sun shines most of the time, and the feeling is laid back. The rents are low and palm trees grow, but every once in a while you think about making your way back. I know you're not New York City, born and raised, but nowadays you're lost between two shores. LA's fine, but it ain't home. New York's home, but it ain't yours no more.
Yeah.
get a shiny green bird.
Hey, this is Sean Ash in Phoenix, Arizona. I just wanted to let you guys know I love your show. I fucking love the format. I stumbled across it a few months ago and blew through all those back episodes. Keep up the good work, guys, and I just wanted to give you praise. All right, take care. Love you guys. Bye.